What is good, everybody? Happy Thursday to you all. Welcome to the Tip-Off, the show that sets the stage for the most important news, daily fantasy plays, and bets on tonight's 2-game NBA slate, an 8-game MLB slate, and some golf, by the way, which we have Dr. Rasa joining us. We're going to talk some of that. We also have Eytan Shander. So good to see you. You filled in for me last week, and now I finally get to see you face-to-face. How are we doing, guys?
Excellent. Good to be back.
I said the name right,
Good to see you. You absolutely, you nailed it for sure.
Names
and
names
look, I'll say this, for when I filled in for you last week, I had to actually make it known when I just put a message out on the chat that yes, I'm in the house, but yes, you are back too, because it took people, I think, 2 days of me filling in for you just to get used to my sound. I don't think they got used to my face. So I'm sure that everybody's happy that you're back in the capacity that I'm on the show as well. Trust me. And then Ben's in the house.
I am here. Yeah. I don't know what's been going on. I always wonder, well, Kayla, I can ask you, what's been going on the Tip-Off show? I have missed the past few days because of the French Open. Has Eric done anything outrageous? I know Spags isn't here to give me the report.
So we've had 2 new segments introduced this week. Well, actually, one was a reoccurring one. The Pirate Parlay of the day we did, I think, on Monday. Yes, okay. Monday's show. Eric dressed up in full-on pirate. He had a parrot, a hat, an eye patch, a hook, the whole bit. And then yesterday we had Puppet Lindquist, which is a bit that Spags came up with. He literally ordered a puppet, and we call him Eric. And he did a whole segment on that as Puppet Lindquist in his Eric voice.
All right.
So Spags,
he's the ventriloquist in that.
Yes.
Now, is the pirate parlay, like, do these hit him getting up in all of the costume and the arg and all that? Is it at least worth it? Do these hit?
I don't know what he says half the time, but it's pure entertainment factor. I don't know that anyone's really listening. We're all just like, what is happening?
Poor guy. Sounds like I might have to go back and watch and see what else happened on these shows, but it's good to see that the show's still rolling.
It's definitely worth your time. I meant to actually go back and clip it, which I forgot to do, but it's too late now. But yes, go back and watch it. Monday's show, very entertaining.
Okay.
No, I was going to say, I wasn't told whether or not to all I have is this big, obnoxious, gritty head. That's the only thing that I have, which is like a life-size gritty head. So look at Ross's eyebrows going up. Now, you in the NHL world, Kayla, know all about gritty.
I know all about gritty, yes.
He came into the studio at a local show. Everybody does. I know. I'm just saying. He came into the studio one day at a local show, and they gave us this gritty costume. So somehow I walked out with a gritty head. I told Spags that like 2 weeks ago, and I think it just in one ear, out the other. But I wasn't prepared for that today, at the very least.
Well, we're going to need to see it at some point now that you've brought it up.
Fair enough. I could go run and get it real quick if you want, but I don't want to be off screen. Have Jordan go into conniptions or anything like that. So.
Yes, stay here with us. I will say, though, our mascot at the Kings was not fond of gritty.
Nobody likes gritty. I think it
might be a jealousy thing. Gritty gets a lot of attention.
Well, gritty also represents Philadelphia, and we just have such a bad reputation around the country. So I don't know if those two kind of like... Lofty's not doing us any favors on here. I promise you that. So
probably true. Just kidding. We love Lofty.
Absolutely. All right. He's why I'm here.
Well, amazing. Love that. Okay. We're going to get into it. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for countless hours of content on the NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, and every other sport that's in season. Really quick, we want to talk to you about our sponsor, No House Advantage, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. With over 500 player props offerings, No House Advantage is the largest provider of player props in the industry. And the best part is that you will receive a $20 first match deposit bonus today using promo code Awesemo. Be your friends, not the house. Download in the App Store and win big with player props today. Getting right on into our bad beats. Yesterday included a couple of breakout performances, including one from Seth Curry to break the early slate, from the Sixers to the Clippers, and lots more MLB and PGA action to tilt over. Any really bad beats for you guys? How did it go for you last night? Ben, we're going to start with you.
It was fine. I mean, definitely not on the bad beat side. Betting the Knicks is a bad beat in life. I learned the hard way that team is fraudulent in many, many ways. Everyone else held serve. Utah, they lost that first game. Mitchell come back. They rolled. Your Sixers, Eytan, they're just better even without Embiid. I think we all saw that. And then the big surprise, of course, was Luka. The Clippers are a hard team to gauge. They finally get it to 2-2, and then they drop another one at home. I didn't bet that game. I really had no feel on it. So it was a relatively smooth night for me betting. No real major waves, and sometimes that's a good thing.
So
I'm sorry, Kayla.
No, go ahead.
I think for me personally, it would be, when you look at the Knicks game, I stayed as far away from that as humanly possible just because of the low scoring element was so tough. And you just kind of figured Atlanta had it. But the Sixers, look, that start of that game and really up until the half, the Sixers were down. And there was so many live moments to jump in where they were -1.5, -2 points, where you knew they were even like +265 down 5 in the first quarter. The one that I think you can maybe explain as somewhat of a bad beat, but it really shouldn't be that, is Dallas winning on the road. But look, Dallas has been a really good cover for the most part on the road all season. It shouldn't shock us, right, that the Mavs come out and are able to win a couple of games. Now, up 3-2 and all on the road, yes, but a couple in LA shouldn't totally shock us, at least from an outright victory standpoint. And I'll say this, the one DFS moment for me that I feel like was a terrible beat across the board was when Matisse Thybulle was announced as a starter. And I'm watching Josh and Greg live before lock last night. I'm going through changing everything drastically, rapidly, as fast as I possibly can to get Tease in these lineups. And look, this is my guy here, right? Love Tease here. We're all bowled up here in Philadelphia, but he gave me nothing, absolutely nothing. And after all of that advice from Josh and Greg and the exposure in the lineups, I felt a little robbed, a little bit.
But you got the win.
I love your energy. Bringing that Philly energy.
Oh, he brings the energy, which is good. You got the fire, and we need it on a slate like this with only 2 games. It was a good night, but I'm saying all the series are over. Like I wanted to see some of these games, obviously, particularly the Knicks, but even Memphis. I wanted to see those series go a little longer. So I am a little sad on that regard.
You and me both. I was not ready for Russell Westbrook to go bye-bye this early, but what can you do?
What can you do?
Yeah, the Embiid thing, really, they should have been closed out in 4. Embiid plays, 11 minutes. He gets hurt that game. So that kind of extends it. But personally, I will miss Russell Westbrook. I don't know how you can watch basketball and not enjoy watching Russell Westbrook, but yeah, there is kind of this sense of closure right now. There is one game, though, tonight. I don't know we'll get to it, but there is one game tonight that I'm pretty sure that series is going 7.
Which one?
Oh, well, Denver, Portland.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know if you were going to tell us or okay.
No, I didn't know.
Really quickly, Ben.
Like, you're driving the ship, so I don't want to step on anything. I don't know what we're doing here. All right. Trust me. I'm new. This is my first day.
Ben, really quickly, I know you kind of mentioned it in the chat, but someone wants to know what obscure sport will Dr. Rasa bet on today? What is the weirdest sport that you watch?
I don't watch a lot.
What's the weirdest sport you bet on?
I bet a lot of soccer and tennis, and those are 2 sports that are not my forte. Like today, I did bet a little Asian World Cup qualifiers. Kuwait and Australia just played. Wow. Bahrain and Cambodia played this morning, which was a disaster on multiple levels for Cambodia. But I try to stay away from that stuff unless there's World Cup at stake, because then it's easier to gauge the motivation of the teams.
I can't say that's something I'm super locked in on.
I was going to say, it didn't make the run sheet today, Chad. I'm sure you're devastated, but you know what? We do have some good topics nonetheless.
And that's what we're going to get to right now. Yes, go ahead.
Are you telling me that Dr. Rasa has never woken up in the middle of the night and fought insomnia by live betting Russian table tennis? Never,
table
ever.
Tennis is like, no, I don't bet table tennis, but people do. I was just reading something on that in our thread, but
is table tennis ping pong?
Yes,
kind of.
Yes.
Okay. Is that the same
I
thing?
tried to highbrow it, but for me, it's ping pong.
Let's dumb it down. It's ping pong.
All right.
Sorry.
Checking. Let's get
Kayla nailing me on that tech.
Let's get to the NBA playoffs. There are two huge games again tonight with Portland, Denver, and Phoenix Lakers, with 2 hours of coverage after the show with the NBA Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock. Stay tuned for that. But we've got to get our takes in first, so let's talk about the best DFS plays and bets. First up, we've got it was Dame time for the Blazers last time out, owning the slate in a double OT thriller. Eytan, can we go back to the Dame well, and what else stands out from a betting standpoint?
Yeah, I think it's hard to turn your back on Damien Lillard when you know this series has kind of shifted back and forth and the pendulum swings so far that the winning team is going to do it more convincingly than not. But I do feel like Denver is going to throw everything they possibly can at Damien Lillard and try and just limit his ability to score, as difficult as that really is. I tell you, the one guy that I think truly opens up now, especially for the cost at 7,600 on DraftKings, CJ McCollum, I feel like is going to have a gigantic game because he is just the easy outlet when teams crunch down on Damien Lillard. Look, I'm not saying that Dame's going to have a bad night. I'm not saying to stay away from Dame entirely, but if you're expecting 90 points, 70 points, maybe even 50 points, you might be disappointed. Meanwhile, for the cost and the return, McCollum, I think, is the absolute play. I don't hate Nurkic by any means if you could work him into some lineups. And then real quick, as far as the game is concerned, this thing's going 7. This is back now in Portland. We've seen how effective or back right in Denver to Portland now. We've seen how effective the home team can be. We've seen how effective the winning team can be. So I don't even mind laying the short line here and taking the 5 in this case in Portland. I'm good with that.
So I'm definitely with CJ McCollum. I think that's a great call. This situation, it's funny. You look at the last game, and I mean, we all saw what Dame did. McCollum took 2 less shots in that game. So it's not like the volume was radically different. It was just Lillard could not miss, and McCollum was 7 of 22. So he just didn't have the output. But if you're going to give the ample opportunity to him, and after a game like that, everyone is talking about, Denver's lucky they won in a lot of regards, but everyone is saying the same thing. You have to find a way to stop Lillard, and they're going to probably overreact in some situations to that. I wouldn't be stunned to see him being trapped at half court in situations. And this should really open it up for these other guys, particularly McCollum. Now, if Denver would have lost that game, I don't think this would be going 7 because that was such an emotional game. Now Portland gets the benefit. They'll be lifted by the crowd tonight, and that should, I think, propel them. I'm with you that they can get it done. But looking at the DFS side, I mean, you've got Lillard at 10-3, which again, when you can shoot like that, of course he's in play, but I would rather take the discount to McCollum. I'm completely in lockstep with you, but I do want to pass it right back to you for 1 second. What do you think about the wings? Like, do you look to Norm Powell? Do you look to Covington? Or do you think maybe you just stick with kind of, the next best options with McCollum and Nurkic?
This is where I think it gets tough, right? Because are you going to roster 4 Blazers tonight in your optimal lineup? If you are, then I think you could get away with the backcourt and a combination of Powell and Rocco. And look, Covington here in Philadelphia and then moving on and doing bigger and better things, that's great. I think, honestly, if I'm going to try and work both of them in the lineup, and I'm probably, and this may not meet a lot of people's expectations, but of the 4, I would probably fade Dame and then look at spending up elsewhere on the slate. If it's LeBron, if it's somebody else, I would look to spend elsewhere on the slate and take advantage of McCollum and take advantage of both of those wings. Because look, Portland's not winning this game with Damian Lillard scoring 80 points and McCollum sliding in 50. Covington is going to be active. And look, I know real life got in the way last time, right? Where Dame just couldn't find any help on that. But I really like Covington and I like Powell. So in that, I'm in love with the idea of playing Robert Covington. I'm probably more in with the idea of playing Powell.
All right. Denver has the chalk that keeps on giving in Jokic, but who else can we trust on the Nuggets, Dr. Rasa?
So, I mean, obviously, Jokic, he does what he does every game. He's unbelievable. And it's funny. I think Portland had a pretty sound strategy. They seemed like they were content to let him score and limit the assist upside. And when Denver's really gotten loose, it's been him creating. And even in that last game, I mean, the play that stands out outside of all the Lillards was Jokic's pass to Michael Porter Jr. in the corner for the dagger three. And I think that's the extension of what you're going to look at tonight. If Denver is going to steal this game, to me, it has to be Michael Porter Jr. having a huge game because Jokic can't do it by himself. They have other shooters, obviously. Rivers can chip in. Morris was fantastic in that last game. I have no problem with those guys as salary relief. But when you're talking about a game like this, you're going to need more than that. A 228.5 total here. This game is going to be played in the hundreds. You need someone to step up. And I think that Michael Porter Jr. is the wild card. We saw, he was 1 for 3 in a game. That's just unacceptable for a guy that good with 3 points. He was 10 of 13 in 48 minutes in that double overtime game. That's going to be the type of volume that you need. I actually think he should be shooting more. So when I look at Denver tonight, I have no problem going to Michael Porter Jr. Certainly, if you have the salary, you can go all the way up, but you need someone else to step up for the Nuggets to stay in this game.
Yeah, I think honestly, when I look at the backcourt, Monty Morris is probably going to be a really good low-cost play there with the minutes, with the opportunity. You know that there's going to be scoring. You mentioned as far as Michael Porter Jr. now picking up that void that he needs to consistently. Aaron Gordon is probably going to be another play because that third option as far as scoring has kind of moved over to Aaron. And if he's going to play well and if he's going to pick up that slack, then Denver's going to be in this game. Otherwise, it could be over early, despite what Jokic and Porter Jr. do. So I think from a standpoint of Monty Morris, that's probably a nice little sneak play where you can save some money and get a good return for it. I think you're right, though, Ben, when you look at the double overtime game and how that ended and how deflating it was for Denver, or pardon me, for Portland to come back now in Portland, where this is where I think you take advantage of sway. And this is where I think you take advantage of the opposite. People think, Denver's going to come out and they got that win. They're going to cruise here. They're going to put it on Portland on the ropes. I think if you could even lay points in the first quarter, it might be good enough just to, if it's 2.5, it's 3.5, wherever you can find the best number, might be good to jump in first quarter and lay some points with Portland, because I think if anything, Denver is going to have that letdown from that win when it comes to the first quarter. Game is different. Portland wins it. But the first quarter, I think Portland gets up, and that's where I wouldn't mind laying some points.
The Lakers are looking to avoid elimination, most likely down a big cog in AD. Is this a LeBron game? And what stands out for DFS and betting Eytan?
Yeah, I think this definitely feels like, and, Anthony Davis, I saw in the stream, right, that it looks like he's playing. So I don't know if that's come down officially yet. I was trying to just look real quick, but look, it's a little bit of a later game, so you can maneuver throughout it. I don't think that there are many other people that you want to trust in a top optimal lineup tonight, maybe outside of LeBron James. And even then, you're spending up. So that's where the whole discussion about like a Damien Lillard, for example, I just don't trust the Lakers overall. Even with Anthony Davis back, Phoenix has found this confidence that you don't usually see with such young, fresh teams in the postseason. Chris Paul is healthy. I know he's still up there as a game-time decision with the shoulder, but he's definitely a vehicle now for this team's success. I just don't see it with LA tonight across the board. And if that's the case and the Lakers lose, I see a lower scoring game. So maybe you can get around with LeBron kind of filling the stat sheet. But outside of LeBron and if AD plays, I just don't think I'm going to take a risk on a Laker when I know I could probably take a risk on like a Jay Crowder and it pay off better.
It's going to be fascinating. I mean, LeBron, I can't imagine he's going out like that. I wanted to change. That game was the least competitive game I've ever seen. They got punched first and they never responded. Now, looking at our ownership right now, it looks like LeBron, and I get it, he's going to be extremely popular. This is just 2 games and he could push upwards of 50%, but I feel like I'm just getting, I don't want to say sucked in because it's LeBron, but I have a hard time to think that he doesn't go out maybe on an inefficient game, but it's hard to think he'll be not at least firing today because AD may play, but from everything I've seen that I don't know if he's going to be AD. He may be out there kind of decoy style. So, maybe he does log 30 plus minutes, but I don't know if the Lakers can get by like that. They're a 2-point favorite at home, 207 total, as you just brought up. That's 20 points south of this other game. So from a DFS side, certainly I think you're going to want to overhaul your lineups to the Nuggets Blazers, but the field is going to do that as well. It's just a weird question mark, because I think when you build today, you really want to be cognizant of starting with AD in the sense of not in your lineups, but what do you think he gives them? Because if he's his usual self, obviously the usage for everyone else takes a hit. If he's not, you're going to have Drummond and Kuzma and KCP. All these guys are going to have to step up around LeBron. So certainly I'm comfortable with LeBron in all formats, because I do think for the Lakers to have any chance, he has to go LeBron, circa, Cavaliers style, but they're going to need more than that if AD is ineffective tonight.
Dwayne in the chat said that game felt like a death in the family. What did we think of LeBron just like walking off?
He can do whatever. I'm a huge LeBron guy, so I give him an excuse for everything.
Ben, did I know this about you? I don't know that I did.
No, yeah, I'm big team LeBron guy. So his antics, him going blind on the court and flopping all over the place.
Gosh.
It's quite all right. He can do whatever he wants.
The legacy game that was the playing game. Do you have a poster somewhere in the room where you are of that single shot?
3 rims. 3 rims.
I should get my witness banner out. Yeah, I mean, can you really, honestly though? I mean, and I think Phoenix is a very impressive team. They've been good all year. I know CP3 is dealing with his own things, but Booker, Ayton's been unbelievable, way better than I thought he would be on the inside. I just can't think that the Lakers, they may lose tonight, but I would be truly stunned if they're blown out again. I expect them to at least punch first. And they're a team, you mentioned Portland. I actually feel pretty comfortable with the Lakers in the first quarter or even the first half. I do think that they start fast. Maybe they don't have enough, at the end of the game if LeBron wears down and he's asked to play 40 plus, but I think they'll be certainly sharper tonight.
DFS Chief Ben wants you to get a witness back tattoo.
Another one?
I'm here for that.
Can you fit 2 on your back?
So quick.
Yeah. I don't know if I have enough room. We'll see. We'll see what I can do.
Wow, that's amazing. All right.
You get one with AD.
I mean, I don't know if I'm going to be inking myself up for I'm not exactly a Lakers fan. I wish LeBron, like everyone else, was playing for the Knicks, but
maybe
what
someday.
a tough existence.
Oh, it is a tough. It's been a rough. I was on the golf show last night trying to keep it together as Julius Randle was throwing shots over the backboard. It was not great. But you know what? That's the price you pay for living in New York. What can you say?
I thought the Jazz was your team.
I mean, certainly growing up they were, and I have a soft spot for them. I bet so much in, I've always bet. I don't have like strong like fandom for these teams. Like I would like to see the Jazz play good. And I live in New York, but I'm not going to be devastated if either of them go down.
Noted. All right. Last bit of news here. The Suns come off a convincing win with Devin Booker leading the way. Any issues going back to the Booker well, and who else is a smart play tonight, Ben?
I mean, certainly you can look to Devin Booker. He was just fantastic. And he's another guy similar to Lillard, obviously not to the same extent, but Lillard was terrible in the game before his explosion. He was 1 for 10 and Booker was not good either. So you're going to be looking to him. You have Ayton at 7,700. We have him projected for 38 minutes tonight. And if he's on the court for that much, especially if AD is a non-factor, foul trouble is mitigated. He's a walking double-double, and it seems like the floor is relatively high. Then you look at these kind of value options. I think you're competing, as Eytan brought up earlier, Morris on the Nuggets. You've got Cameron Payne, who was a lightning bolt of energy off the bench there, and they do need someone like that. You've got Bridges as well. I'm not in love with these plays. I'm kind of just neutral on them. But again, when you only have 2 games, you don't have the luxury of picking and choosing. There's only a couple guys at each price point. So I think it's fine going to the Suns. It's really price dependent on where you're looking at. Booker makes sense, but I think that I'd stick more to 8 and maybe some of the pay down options, Payne or Bridges.
Yeah, I think that's a good point there. Again, 6,500 for Chris Paul out there. I think knowing that he's going to get minutes, what he's projected at, that's going to be a pretty good anchor to bet and wager a DFS play on the game being close. Lakers may win this thing. I don't think they do personally. I wouldn't bet that they do personally, but I'll concede that that's a possibility. I don't see a blowout. I don't see all of a sudden the Phoenix Suns showing their youth. So yes, it's a lower total, but I think I approach it kind of from the narrative of who's winning this game. Like before, who's winning the Portland-Denver game? It's the Blazers. So we're going to be heavy on some Blazers, 3, maybe 4 guys in your lineup. Jay Crowder, as I mentioned, is up there at 4,900. Pretty good value play with the projection where that ceiling could be upwards to 30 fantasy points. Not terrible. Bridges, and you mentioned Eytan. Look, Eytan, I think, and at least Paul for me, Eytan and Paul are going to be 2 guys that I'm going to work in my lineups as much as humanly possible. Eytan has been an absolute monster. I just don't see how even Drummond, however that rotation is, slows him down. Nothing really has been able to. So that could open some things up as well. More possessions in a lower scoring game, or at least projected to get a couple of offensive rebounds. So Bridges and Crowder, I think, is where I would look as far as cheaper options if you were pivoting in those positions, the 3 across the board. But I'm pretty good not relying on Devin Booker and playing him, but not relying on him like I would similarly not relying on Dame Lillard. I will say, though, this game, back to what you were saying about the betting element of it, there is something about the Phoenix Suns, their ability to cover on the road this year, and now feeling somewhat healthy. I look at the money and the split of it. It's pretty down the middle. I was super, super hoping for this LeBron narrative to carry into the betting markets. And we would see, 25,000 tickets and 89 to 90% of the public betting and then the money on it. But it's split right down the middle. The line is barely budged, right? A half a point or so from the open. So this is pretty much locked. The books are not budging no matter what's happening. And maybe that's a nice little indicator that Ben Rasa here knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, well, I don't know. The Lakers are such a public side. We all know that. But I think it's funny because it's kind of 2 strong forces. You have that, but then everybody, these island games, everybody's watching. The Lakers looked as done as a team could be. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are just saying this team has no chance. They're done. I'm going to bet the Suns. I'm not. How can you bet the Lakers tonight? I'm more in the camp that the Lakers are going to be, I don't want to say just fine, but I do expect them to show up tonight. And I wouldn't be even remotely surprised if we're talking about another 2-game slate for 2 Game 7s in a couple of days.
Ooh, we shall see if that happens, but I think you're right. I don't think they're going to go down quietly. No. All right, friends, don't forget to get access to all the great Awesemo Plus tools and content for nearly every DFS sport out there with an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95. This includes full access to all the premium content and tools on Awesemo.com, including player projections, ownership projections, our premium Slack channel, lineup builder, and much more. Only looking to play MLB DFS? Then sign up now for our Awesemo Plus MLB weekly package for only $15.95. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. We're going to head to the diamond now. Before we do, Eytan, I need to know about your background. Is that something you did through Zoom? Do you have a green screen? What's going on? How did we do that fancy background?
Yes. So I initially started with a green screen, and I had a bunch of stock stuff that was just for like my radio shows or TV stuff I do here in Philly. So we were just going through, like cycling through, and I'll show you the backgrounds, like the stock background, right? Where it's me in front of, like a cafe or a brick wall. I think I deleted that. Here's the brick wall, right? So it's like totally, it's pretty obvious that I'm on Zoom and I'm doing a Zoom and there's a green screen and all. So we figured, all right, well, why don't you just make something pretty cool? And the great team at Awesemo did that, where at least there's some sort of Awesemo related background, right?
I love it.
Just using the green screen for their best, their best life here with the green screen. I'm just here happy to be here. So it looks cool.
It looks great. I just had to know. Now I want that.
No, I didn't do this. I'm not talented enough to put this thing together. If that's where you were going, no, this was done for me, not by me.
Noted. All right, it is now time for Biggest Bat. We're going to head to the diamond for some of the top bets and plays on tonight's MLB slate before the MLB Live Before Lock crew takes you through the full slate right after the show. So which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best overall bet to hit a home run tonight? We've got Christian Yelich plus 300, Jose Abreu plus 370, Pete Alonso plus 340, Ronald Acuna plus 270, and Rafael Devers plus 350. Ben, we'll start with you.
All right, here we go to the diamond. It was unavoidable. I'm going with Yelich. I know he's the favorite here, but again, I'm just going to take the very simple approach. I'm looking at these games. The Brewers game, highest total on the slate. They're a heavy favorite at home. They're sitting at minus 185, and Duplantier, or whoever the hell this guy is pretty obvious that there's this, a pretty sizable chance that he has some trouble tonight. So just look at the Brewers, their implied total, and everything else checks out. Yelich, of course, is the centerpiece of that offense. He's batting third tonight. I think I'll have a pretty good opportunity. And the odds, every time we do this, it's really not a drastic, when we talk about some things in the NBA and whatnot, you're talking about like plus 200, and then other guys are like plus 700 for some of these things. These guys are all pretty sandwiched. So I kind of treat it as best available in a lot of situations. And Yelich, to me, even at 3-1, I think we'll have some opportunities tonight.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all. I mean, look, the value is going to be here right across the board. I don't hate Pete Alonso, though. If you can squeeze that in, and, the return on it at plus 340. So it's a little bit higher from that standpoint. And, go into this matchup tonight with the Mets, and clearly it hasn't been lights out like we've seen that full season. But late night on the road in San Diego, you have that lower total at 6.5. I feel a contrarian moment coming in which we're going to see more of a 10-7 finish, and Pete Alonso is going to anchor that. So I'm going to take Pete Alonso at plus 340 and watch him hit 2 out tonight.
2?
Don't bet that, though. Don't bet that.
Okay, that's like the Seinfeld episode, 2 home runs.
No. Don't bet that. Don't bet.
I like it.
Just bet him hitting 1. How about that? Let's start there.
We'll start there. All right, now for biggest arm. Which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best strikeouts over bet tonight? And is there a good under bet that you like? We've got Yu Darvish over under 7.5 strikeouts. Griffin Canning over under 5.5. Adam Wainwright, my guy, over under 5.5. Lance Lynn over under 7.5. And Taijuan Walker over under 4.5. Eytan, we'll start with you.
I like Darvish, and he's right there at the top. He's got the highest number, but you look at what he's been able to do so far, and right below Cole on the slate today. If you looked at everything overall, not the late, as just under 10, or just over, I should say, 10.5 Ks through 9. He's not really walking guys at that high of a clip either. So I think there's an opportunity here for him to get into 5-6 innings quality start time and take advantage of his ability to really cause a whiff and strike some people out. Again, it's the highest number that we have outside of Lance Lynn, who's also at 7.5. So I understand that there's risk there, but over 7.5 won't be juiced up as far as that number being a little bit higher. So I think there's value, and I think there's good opportunity for you to get that.
I'm gonna go with Lance Lynn, former Cardinal great. And it's again,
that's right.
That's right. I look at the situation, the White Sox at home, minus 220, over under in that game is just 8. And then I look at the Tigers. They're a team that's been striking out a lot all year. They're 29th in the league, over 10 a game. So he should have ample opportunities to case some of these guys. He could go deep in the game, even though they are a sizable favorite at home. So I'll say that he could push over that number. Not sure I would bet the White Sox at that number. That's pretty juicy, but I expect Lynn to pitch well tonight.
Love it. Eytan, I know you're new here, but my teams are the Cardinals, the Chiefs. My basketball players are Russell Westbrook and Michael Porter Jr. And my basketball team's the Thunder. Am I missing anything, Ben?
Yeah, Missouri.
Oh my gosh, Mizzou.
You're alumni. Nice job.
I'm
Did you go to Mizzou?
I did. MIZ.
Okay.
So yes, I have a deep love for all of those teams.
Those are good squads. The one that jumps out as I think the odd one out would be the Thunder. But I guess because you love Westbrook, that was the connection, right?
Yes, and Missouri doesn't have an NBA team. My brother went to school in Oklahoma City, so he went there right as the team was getting to OKC, and he grew to love them, so then I grew to love them, and it's a sad story now, but it was really fun back in the day.
Those are tough teams. Well, the Thunder, because they're just atrocious right now, but that's on purpose. But those are tough teams to rip. Like mine are, I'm in Philly, so it's easy. You just outside of the Sixers, it's pretty easy. But you've got some tough teams. Like who's going to rip the Cardinals? Even when they're bad, it's all the history and everything.
Spags will rip the Cardinals.
Yeah, he will.
He'll rip anything.
Confirmed. Seen it.
He's seen it firsthand. Just hates us because he ain't us.
That's it. It's a good mantra to live by.
Exactly. All right, we are going to keep things moving here, heading over to the Dr. Ben Rasa prop bet of the day. Dr. Rasa, you are now 20-8 after Luka's assist prop cashed last week. Not crashed, cashed. How does it feel to finally get that 20th win on the tip-off? By the way, I missed, obviously, Thursday and Friday's show last week, so fill me in. How did we do?
We did all right. We split. I was on a little drought. I couldn't get over the hump. I was at 19 for a while, but Luka, in one of those games, he kept it in check with the assists. He was more volume shooting, so it feels good. The playoffs, it's a little tricky with props because the rotations are condensed, and, a lot of times, some of these guys that were playing 35, 36 minutes, like Luka last night, he was on the court basically the whole game. So it's a little tricky. The lines are adjusting, but you got to try to stay one step ahead, and that's what we're going to try to do today.
All right. It is time to tell us what the Dr. Ben Rasa prop bet of the day is.
Too bad the show wasn't earlier. I would have gave out that Asian World Cup qualifier game, won in a landslide. It's a damn shame. I am with, this is going to be a group prop of the day because Eytan said this earlier in the show, and I'm 100% with him. CJ McCollum is primed for a big game tonight. Everyone's looking at Dame, and listen, Dame's fantastic. But McCollum's points, it's sitting at 21.5. There's a lot of 22.5s out there, but you can find 21.5, slightly juiced to the over at -125, but I feel very comfortable with that number. Like I said, he shot 22 times in that last game. He was 7 of 22. And you have to think that Denver's first, second, third priority tonight is contain Lillard. Do not let him shoot. They're also coming off, I don't think this is being talked about a ton, but it was a double overtime game in altitude. Like, that's not the easiest situation. And I know McCollum is also a shooter, so you can argue, but I think he's more prone to get in the lane. When he's at his best, he's actually shooting, more obviously not just threes like Dame is. So I look at this situation tonight. It's beyond a must win. I wouldn't be surprised to see 20 more attempts. I think the Blazers will win the game. And I think Lillard will play more of a distributor tonight. Who better to cash in on a lot of these easy buckets than McCollum? So looking at that, 21.5 is still there. You can grab that, and I suggest doing so.
All right.
Oof. Can I just ask a quick question?
Yes, by all means.
So I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, anybody that's 20-8 on any type of betting prop or team, you're going to tail. That's just what you do. I happen to know that this individual is pretty smart at what he does as well, so that adds it. So I just have to respond because I'm curious where your ceiling is. And not only has that number jumped up a full point to 22.5 here in PA, Ben, it's juiced to high hell on the over.
So that's a really good point. That's, part of the reason these props can be really lucrative is because they're somewhat inefficient when they open, and you can take advantage of that. But you need to be able to say to yourself, sometimes I missed the line. You know what? I liked it at this number, and I'm not going to chase this. If it's 23.5 -150, I'd probably sit it out. What you can do, though, this is something that I think is not talked about enough, particularly in the NBA. When guys have strict rotations, certain guys sit in the first quarter, other guys play the full 12 minutes. You can hit some of these props live. So if a guy is about to rest, that's an opportunity maybe to wait because his prop will slowly decrease because he's not on the court. Or if you know that he rests early, you can jump on it after he comes back into the game. So I still feel pretty comfortable at 22.5. If it gets higher than that, or the juice is up to like -140, -150, I probably wait and try to get exposure to McCollum maybe on the DFS side or in another fashion.
All right. We will see how you do tomorrow, Ben.
Oh yeah, this is Thursday. Yeah, so we need to hit this one because I forgot. I'm back here tomorrow with Spags, who we'll see what that character's up to. I got to ask him about some of these antics from Monday and Wednesday, puppets and pirates.
Yeah.
Pirates and puppets. Yep. That's the tip-off.
I'm not on here tomorrow, but I just pounded 2 units on that prop. So if that doesn't hit, you'll be hearing from me on Twitter.
Okay, so we got a lot going on now. We got no pressure.
Heat is on.
Heat is on.
All
That's
right.
how we like it.
We are going to stick with the NBA for No House Advantages prop or not. Here are some of No House Advantages props of the day for key players. So do you guys like the over or under on them, and how many points would you assign? First up, we've got Michael Porter Jr. over under 6.5 rebounds. Eytan.
I really like the over here. I know that if you look at where we are, a no house advantage, and you just slot it with the over, slot it with the under, that's really the best indicator here of where we think things are. And who am I to disagree with that? We know that there is going to be a ton of opportunity for this young man to just take over game flow. Jokic is going to do what Jokic does. The only thing that stops Jokic is not playing 30 minutes in whatever capacity that could be. But elsewhere, there really isn't more opportunity for Aaron Gordon is not going to steal rebounds away from Michael Porter Jr. This is a kid who has definitely got his confidence up too in this series in victories. If you're looking at Denver hanging at the very least in this game, which hanging could mean they put up a $130. I think Michael Porter Jr. is very integral in both sides of the floor when it comes to rebounding. 6.5 seems almost too low to not go over.
Yeah, and you know what? One of the great tools you can use with No House Advantage is go to the lines themselves. And you look right now on Odd Shopper, it's up to 7.5 in a lot of places. It's 6.5 minus 140 on a book. So you're seeing the value in being able to just pick yes or no on over 6.5. You would have to pay additional juice, or you wouldn't be able to get the line. You would have to play 7.5, which is a massive difference in something like this. So I think it's pretty clear that you're going to want to structure that and lean over tonight. It doesn't mean he gets there, obviously not, but you all you can do is put yourself in the best opportunities, and over 6.5 for Michael Porter Jr. in a game like this is definitely one way to do it.
All right, moving on to Monty Morris, over under 3.5 assists, Ben.
Kind of the same story, to be honest. This is another one that I definitely lean over, and I go to the books. This is 4.5 everywhere. There's no more 3.5s out there, so you're just stealing a full assist. And when you're talking about the difference between 3 and 4, again, massive, massive difference. Morris was fantastic. We talked about that earlier in the show. He was one of the many keys to Denver winning that game. He came up really huge, particularly with the free throws late, but he should be in line to distribute enough tonight to push over this prop.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at where we are with NHA, there's a strong level of confidence in Monty Morris just being involved in this game, just sheer minutes, and he's going to be out there. And again, the facilitator role is definitely going to be there. He's going to be asked, right? And we know to get some assists, 5, 6 as far as a target, but really early. I think they're going to work Morris early to try and move that ball around and really take advantage of where Jokic is and some spacing with Porter. But all of that said, the reality is what you just laid out. It's 4, and I just looked in 4 different books here in PA to try and check it. You can't find it here at 4.5. I don't even know. It's like it never even existed at 3.5. So absolutely, I'm taking that over, not looking back.
Not looking back. Love it. All right. And last, we've got CJ McCollum over under 2.5 3-pointers made. Eytan.
Absolutely. Over. And this is the narrative tonight. Ben agreeing and furthering it and expounding on it and building on it to make it much more pretty and acceptable. I love, because it makes me feel better about all the attention I'm spending on CJ McCollum from both a betting and a DFS standpoint. There's no way that Ben Rasa, the Dr. Rasa prop of the day, hits, which I think it does, without this going over as well. I know McCollum is going to get in the lane. He's going to take advantage of him being able to take guys off the dribble. But you know what? There are going to be so many spacing issues from Denver's defense trying to focus on Lillard. You're going to see McCollum out there, as crazy as that may be, with an open opportunity to knock down some threes. 2.5. Look, you're getting the projection at 4. I wouldn't be shocked if he hit 5, maybe even. No. Okay. 4 and 5 is probably the limit.
Keep it going.
I had to stop.
Yeah, I mean, I think this one, of like anything with 3-point shooting, it's all volume driven. You're going to need him to take shots. But again, the way this game in my mind unfolds, McCollum, and you saw it late in the game. I mean, everyone talks about the Nuggets winning. Lillard deferred at the end, and I'm not blaming him, but these guys were wide open. If McCollum didn't step out of bounds, he would have ample opportunities late in that game to make plays. I think we see a lot of wide open opportunities. If he takes north of 6, 8, 10, which is his last 3 totals in these games, I'll live with the result. So you need him to make them, but if he gets the opportunities, that's really all you can ask for in a situation like this.
And as always, friends, don't forget to play on No House Advantage, our sponsor, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app and use promo code Awesemo to receive a deposit bonus of up to $20 for new signups. Be your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. Eytan, it's a little late for this, but I should have asked you, do you prefer going by your first or last name?
Eytan's fine. I get called Shander on it depends. A lot of people in Philly just couldn't say my name for a little bit, so it just turned into Shander. So people call me Shander on the radio. People call me Shander. The host of Good Day on Fox 29 here in Philly. Hey, Shander, are you ready? So it's up to you. Whatever you feel more comfortable. You could call me asshole. You can call me Eytan. I've had everything in it all in between. Trust me.
I certainly won't call you that. No, I was just curious because, obviously Spags, it would be weird to call him Chris at this point. He goes by Spags.
Yes.
I think that's the only one, really. But then for this next segment, I was like, oh, shoot, have I been saying...
No.
Okay.
I just did it for the alliteration. I think Eric got that in my head, this whole thing. So he just poisoned my brain with alliteration. Sorry.
Love it. Okay, and that brings us to our next segment. Jander's four-way super play parlay of the day. Take it away, Eytan.
So I did this ahead of time without any understanding or realization, Kayla, that you worked extensively in the PPL and the professional PLL. Pardon me. Geez, PPL. That's something different here. The PLL. So I looked at. Basically, I was inspired because last time I was on this show, Dr. Ben Rasa came out with 2 heavyweight men's lax plays in the NCAA tournament, which I think he was even there watching. Money probably burn or cash.
Wow.
So I thought, you know what, let's come back and let me further a little bit with lax. The season is opening up tomorrow, so you can get in here. So this is the first leg of it. And then I realized after talking with you pre-show that you are the expert beyond all when it comes to this league. Rasa knows the sport as well, don't get me wrong, but this is where I'll begin. The Redwoods, they open up against a really bad team, and it's all about the Redwoods. If anybody knows about this league, it's in its third, really second year, full first year they played. Now they only played a tournament. Redwoods have lost 2 straight championships, even though it's 1 year, in overtime to the favorite. So they really are definitively the second best team. They got a really good draft pick in this past draft that kind of fell to them. And also their one main weakness last year in the tournament was faceoffs. And they went out and got the best faceoff kid in college coming into this league. So I'm laying the 1.5 goals thinking they're going to roll right here at plus 125. The other element of it is what's happening tonight where you can jump in. It's at 5. You can take it at 5.5. It's going to be juice to the under, but it's worth it in a parlay. Boston is an undercover dream all season. They love the under, especially in the playoffs. So I'll love that here. Under 5.5 for the Islanders Bruins game. It was earlier where I jumped in top 20 Ricky Fowler simply because of how well he played last tournament in Kiawah Island. And also, look, he's been changing his swing, and Rasa can tell you it takes time. You don't just change your swing and it works overnight. I think he's finally starting to come into his own, dare I say, and get a little more comfortable. And then lastly, this is the big futures one. He's sitting right now at plus 165. All Dak Prescott needs to be is rolled out upright like Hannibal in those movies to be able to throw a football, and he's going to win NFL Comeback of the Year. It's not going to be Christian McCaffrey. It's not going to be, I'm sorry, Rasa, Saquon Barkley up there in New York. It's going to be Dak Prescott, also because the defense hasn't been fixed, and we know he's going to put up huge DFS numbers. So, bam, Redwoods minus 1.5. Dak Comeback Player of the Year. Under 5.5 goals for the Islanders and Bruins tonight. And it's too early now, or too late, pardon me, to get in. So just use those 3 tonight. And I rolled in Ricky Fowler at top 20 to finish this weekend at plus 225. 868 on the return.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
I feel like I just ran a marathon.
Yeah, I'm fatigued. I'm not going to lie. I really am. It's funny. When I bet some of this stuff, I bet some weird things, as Chad always points out. And I always think, I wonder how many people bet this. I can tell you for certain, you are the only human on this earth with that parlay. So you should feel good about that. That is quite a parlay. A Silence of the Lambs reference in the show. I didn't have that on the bingo card. We don't talk enough movies on these shows, to be honest.
We really don't, no.
But Silence of the Lambs is a all-time great movie. I got some research.
I could have gone John Malkovich and Con Air if you prefer, right? Con
Air is also a classic, maybe not my favorite, but anything with Nick Cage I can get down with.
Oh, jeez.
Why not?
Really?
First Con Air, Kayla?
I have not seen Con Air.
You're missing out.
I feel like I've seen parts of it when it's been on TV, but I've never watched it.
Good, bad
beginning
movie.
to end. Noted.
Bad movie, but yeah, listen.
Really?
Oh, go ahead, please.
Go ahead, Ben.
No, I was just rambling on about how I got to get in the PLL lab because you guys are way ahead of the game on the pro lacrosse. I was focused on college all year. I'm going to get up to speed And we will have some picks throughout the year because these little markets, inefficient, and you can take advantage. I know it sounds silly, but that's why I bet a lot of weird sports, because there is value out there, and it's all about making money at the end of the day.
We talked about it last time. WNBA, the lines just don't move fast enough. Somebody's out. You could sit there for an hour. Anthony Davis comes in, the line moves like that. Top player on a WNBA team is out, and it could take 2 hours for that line to move.
Quickly going back to the lacrosse, it'll be fun this year because like last year we had a partnership with a certain sports book and I wasn't allowed to bet, but this year I can. And I kind of have all the insight. So I did.
Wait, is this now a Dr. Kayla PLL prop of the day?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I don't know if I want to go that far with it. Also, Eytan, I don't know if you knew this, but you said you were rolling with the Redwoods and their tagline is Roll Woods.
Roll it. Is that right?
Yeah.
It is.
I feel even better about this bet.
Yeah.
Watch, Dak Prescott is going to be, I'm going to be sitting here for months with this ticket, and Dak Prescott is going to get hurt in week 10 and just crush this thing. I'm telling you.
Where's Joe Burrow on that list?
He's not that far below, but the difference, I think, for Burrow and also for a lesser extent Carson Wentz, who's also there.
Oh, yes.
I don't think Burrow missed enough time.
Okay.
I think Burrow just played on a bad team. He got hurt towards the end. I just don't think he missed, or he played too much and missed enough time. But as far as Dak is concerned, you know, just looking at the other guys that could be next to him, the only thing you start to look at are guys that are not quarterbacks, I think, more so than anything else. Like Nick Bosa is plus 350 behind Prescott. Bosa's going to have 12 or 13 sacks at least if Prescott is cooking this year. And Joe Burrow at 400, I think that's kind of more of a sucker bet. Same thing with McCaffrey. The only thing I would concede is if the Giants win the division, they win double-digit games, and Saquon Barkley has himself a season, I could see that. But I think it's Dak. I really do. And I'm an Eagles fan saying this.
That's big of you. Wow.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, I don't know where the time has gone. Do we really only have 1 minute left? Shoot. Really quickly.
Rasa said that we had a short slate and that I had to fill time, and now I feel like I've filled too much time because we can't even get to the last stuff.
We got to talking and lost track of time. Weird how that happens. All right, really quickly, we've got good dog, bad dog. Ben, give us your good and bad dog back to back.
So there's only 2 games tonight. I think, like I said, I'm not literally looking to back either of these dogs. I do think the Blazers hold at home. So unfortunately, today it's only going to be one animal for me. I'm gonna stick to just a bad dog, and I'm gonna say the bad dog is the Nuggets because I don't think they get it done in Portland tonight.
All right.
Yeah, with you there. Bad dog is definitely Denver. I can get the Suns right now at plus 114. I don't hate it on the money line, but look, I think that's my good dog. I'll commit to the Suns being my good dog.
I love it. Okay, now for make or break, which player or game currently looks like a make or break spot to you on tonight's slate? Eytan.
I think honestly, if you're looking at it from a DFS standpoint, I think Michael Porter Jr. and CJ McCollum are going to be 2 guys that jump out for me that are going to break the slate, that have potential to break the slate, especially because McCollum, as high owned as he may be, there's going to be so much love on Dame and getting to Dame constantly. So that's where I would look at it.
I'm completely in line with that. I think how the Blazers offense performs tonight is huge for me in the prop market and for the game itself. I think there's a lot of ways that Denver will try to slow down Dame, and the repercussions from that could really help Nurkic and McCollum for sure.
And last but not least, really quickly, fade of the day, Ben.
I think for me, it's actually going to be Booker. I think that the Lakers come out with a much better defensive effort tonight. And listen, he was so good, as they all were in that game. But I think it's a little different story tonight. Not that he has a horrible game, but I don't think that he continues what was just an elite performance in that crucial Game 5.
My quick fade, and it's crazy how this works because the money is pretty much all right now on, or two-thirds on the Bruins, but it's split down the middle. So technically it's a fade the public because the public is betting more on the Isle, even though the money is on the Bruins. So I'm going to take the Bruins here and fade anybody ripping on the Isles right now.
Love it. That is going to do it for us today on the tip-off. Guys, this is so fun. Time flies when you're having fun, right? All right.
Blast.
Thanks again to Dr. Ben Rasa and Eytan Shander. It was great to finally, meet you in person. Ben, always great to see you as well. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. The NBA Deeper Dive and Live Before Locker coming your way next on the same stream, so stay tuned. We'll be back with you tomorrow at 4 Eastern. Yes, 4 Eastern on the tip-off. We've got Ben Rasa, Chris Spags. Have a good one, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.
Silence the Lambs and Con Air. What a stream. What a stream.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com NBA Deeper Dive presented by PrizePicks. I'm Dave Loughran. On the Twitters at Loughy_D, LOUGHY_D. While you're over there, hit me with a follow. Hit me up. I like to go back and forth there on the platform. So does my guy, Adam Scherer, at ShipMyMoney DFS. So apparently today you made a comment about why cyclists shouldn't wear helmets and people got upset.
It wasn't my comment. Someone else tweeted it, and then I saw it ended up on my timeline and the guy was getting like flamed for it because he didn't put any context or anything. And I said, I made fun of people that wear helmets, but I strictly was speaking like you'll see people riding through like my mom's residential neighborhood, like grown adults wearing a helmet on the sidewalk, which I think is ridiculous. So that's what I was referring to. But of course, then people get upset because they think that they should wear a helmet on their mountain bike trail, which they probably should, or when they're like riding down a highway, which they probably should. But
they shouldn't be riding down a highway on a bike.
There's also that point. But yeah, I didn't realize people actually had really strong takes on bike helmets.
You know what else people have really strong takes on?
Illegal hockey hits.
Yeah. Boy, I'll tell you what, people did not like that yesterday, did they?
No, it's my favorite thing because I get to jump into that fray like 8 times a year and just defend Tom Wilson.
Hockey fans, man, they are serious about the integrity of their sport.
Mm-hmm.
Someone said last night, "Oh, I love seeing a D-level tout chime in on hockey when it comes to playoff time." I was like, the first part of your sentence is accurate, but I actually know a whole lot about hockey.
I know way more about hockey than what I talk about on air.
I was like, dude, I know hockey as good as anybody. I just don't care to watch it when the Flyers are terrible and the playoffs. NHL playoffs are one of the greatest things ever. I mean, that's true. The NHL playoffs just goes to a different level. It's fantastic stuff.
Yeah, NHL playoffs are great.
Anyway, we got 2 games to talk about here, and we're happy to have everybody with us. If you're coming in after the tip-off show or you're just jumping in now, welcome to all of you. Hit that thumbs up. I heard Josh, man, just excoriating Eytan yesterday. Apparently, the like total, not up to standards, but we'll cut him a break. It's understandable. Don't do that to me. Don't lay waste to me so Josh can come on. I don't even know if he's on afterwards and talk about not being enough likes. There's plenty to go around here, but in all seriousness, if you do like the show, you want to help support us, hit that thumbs up, make it the first thing you do, at least get us up to 200 here, and subscribe to the channel. That's more important than anything else. Hit that subscribe button and we get started. All right, man. So 2 games to touch on here. I think there are some really good props for tonight as well. So keep an eye on all of that. And once we start diving into this, I'll hit on a few that I really like. We have our free player prop tool over at Awesemo.com as well. But we got Denver, Portland, Phoenix, and the LA Lakers. The Denver Nuggets here come into the game up 3-2 in the series after an absurd double overtime. Just absolutely. You and I didn't get to talk about this yesterday. Double overtime showdown that saw Damien Lillard shoot wildly efficiently with 55 points. Jokic had another big game, and CJ McCollum stepped out of bounds when what could have been the tying shot on their final legitimate possession. So coming into this one, elimination game, where do we go with Jokic? And do you have any concerns with the fact that he's playing good minutes, but he's not really playing playoff minutes?
Yeah, so I had made that case. I don't even want to say case against, but I had pointed that out earlier in the postseason when you had the 4-game slates and, you were talking about slates where, maybe you had Westbrook and you had Giannis and you had all these other, Luka at the top. Jokic is playing like 35, 36 minutes in regulation when the game's competitive. In other games, he's been able to get off the floor even without playing that many minutes. So I think it's kind of a concern. But when you look at this particular slate, you only have the 2 games. The only guys to pay up for are LeBron, Dame, and maybe Anthony Davis, and who knows how many minutes he's playing if he does play. So I think it's less of a concern here, especially when you know that Jokic is on average going to produce more fantasy points per minute than those guys. It's still it's tough to give up like 6 minutes on average. Like Dame probably is playing 42 minutes tonight. Jokic, might play 36, but still, you're talking 1.6 fantasy points per minute for Jokic in this series, over 1.7 fantasy points per minute in games without Jamal Murray this season overall. So I would rather he play 40 minutes, but I'm still not going to knock him too much. I still think he's the highest projected guy on the slate.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I think when you're looking at who's around him, you're not going LeBron over Jokic, right? Even if Anthony Davis is inactive.
Yeah. I mean, I would need an ownership gap there. The thing is too, like you could make the argument from a positional standpoint because you do have Nurkic, you do have DeAndre Ayton at center on this slate. And then also, you have the Lakers in an elimination game. So you could see LeBron play 44 minutes or something. I think it's closer than it normally would be, but I still lean Jokic, if we're not factoring in ownership or anything like that.
All right. So I'm with you. One of the props actually that I wanted to hit on was, and you and I may have differing opinions on this, but Jokic under 6.5 assists, which sounds crazy. Okay. I get it, but it's minus 110. The under's not juiced hard at all. Neither is the over, obviously. And he's been asked to do so much as a scorer in this series, Adam, in the postseason. You look at some of the numbers. What if I told you that Facundo Campazzo and Monte Morris are averaging more or as many potential assists per game as Jokic in this series? Jokic has the third highest assist rate on his team this series. Now, granted, a lot of that has to do with the fact that his usage rate is a sky-high 37.5%. It's way higher than anyone else on this team, and it's not even remotely close. But his assist rate is only 23.9%. For him, that's way low. Potential assist, way low. And if you look at his actual assist totals, which we care about here, in context when you keep everything else in mind, he had 9 in that double overtime game, right? But going into overtime, I believe he was way under that. He has had 1, 5, 5, and 1 in the other 4 games. He's scoring a ton, but he is not playing that facilitator role because he has to score to keep them competitive.
Yeah, I was going to say all the same things. Like when that's a low enough prop on his assists that you're not going to be very comfortable if you bet the under and you're watching this game. You're kind of just be, holding your breath the whole time. But the way the series has gone, I think it makes sense because, like you said, Campazzo's getting a bunch of assist opportunities. So is Monte Morris, who's playing a bunch of minutes off the bench. And Jokic's numbers, his assist numbers are still good for a center, but they're not close to the level that you were seeing during the regular season because he has just been taking more shots, playing a bigger role as a scorer, a little bit less as a facilitator. So I do think it's a spot where, again, you're not going to be feeling real good until the game actually ends. But if I'm taking a side there, I think it's the under as well.
Yeah, right. This isn't one where he goes into the fourth with 1 assist. Maybe it is. I don't know. It's not impossible. He's done it twice already this series, right? Of course, in one of those games, it was a blowout, and the other one, I forget what happened, but it was, he played 35 minutes. I like that. I want to talk to you about another one, actually, that I like, and you can talk DFS purposes. Monte Morris, though, I mentioned a few days ago that Facundo Campazzo, I was like, you didn't expect him to be starting in the postseason, and I think it was our buddy over under was like, didn't you know that Jamal Murray's out? Of course I did. But the fact is that you would think Monte Morris would have been the guy getting the bulk of the minutes. Is last game, and then we can get into the prop talk DFS and all of that, was last game the result of Michael Malone saying, all right, this guy's got 14 points in the fourth quarter, and then he went off, or in the fourth, I think it was 7, and then 7 in overtime, 7 in double overtime, whatever. Were all of his extended minutes the result of just being red hot in the second half and in overtime? Or do you think he's now conditioned back in full strength enough to take those minutes away from Campazzo and become a really good play?
I think it's yes and no because, I think he played both overtimes because he was playing well. But we also had seen him getting, 26 to 28 minutes already in this series. He played like 31 in regulation last game. I think that you're basically going to get 2 out of 3 of Campazzo, Rivers, and Morris in closing lineups most nights, along with Gordon, Porter, and Jokic. I think Morris is likely to normally be in that lineup. I think he's going to be in the lineup over Rivers more often than he's going to be in it over Campazzo. But I think Morris is good enough where, I don't think the fact that Campazzo is starting necessarily means Campazzo is also closing, because I think that they like Morris running that second unit. They like him being out there with the bench, but he is someone that they trust and that they'll put in there in the closing lineup. So I think, to some extent, it was a hot hand situation last game that you can't rely on 31 or 32 minutes here, but I still feel pretty comfortable expecting around 28 from Morris, and that does make him a good value.
Yeah, I think so too. His assist prop is 4.5. Ben told me earlier that it was actually open to 3.5. So, no surprise that we're at 4.5 here. He's second in the team in potential assists in this series, and his minutes haven't been even close to what they were last game out. So even if you think 28, maybe 30 minutes from Morris, I like the over on that, the under on Jokic. It's also possible that if Jokic just has a ton of assists, Morris suffers as a result. But over 4.5 assists for Monte Morris is another spot that I'm willing to get to today. You're just seeing a shift in the way the ball is moving in Denver. And if Monte Morris gets big minutes, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, his assist percentage during the regular season was 17.1%. So far in this series, it's 26.2.
Yeah, for sure. Now, listen, I'm not suggesting that it's sustainable forever, but it's a lot of this is a result of Jokic. I'm wondering how much of this was him just like dishing it off to Jokic in the post and letting him score.
Probably a decent amount.
Yeah, I'm saying like if Jokic is the one that's taking on a heavy responsibility of a score, unless he's holding the ball for 12 seconds at a time, which is entirely possible, the assists are going to come from somewhere. And I think Morris is one of the guys that can make that happen.
And Morris is also going to be on the floor for all 12 minutes or so that Jokic is not.
Right. That's a good point. Yep. Unless Malone switches up the lineup, which there's zero reason to do so at this point in an elimination game with them up 3-2. Let's keep moving on Denver here. Campazzo, since we just talked about Monte Morris, I know he's not a priority whatsoever today, but do you have any thoughts on him coming off easily his worst game of the series, not even close?
My thoughts are really just that it's a 2-game slate, and I think one of the most profitable tournament strategies in postseason in general, and especially as slates get smaller, is to just find the best players that had a bad game their last time out and play them. Campazzo is certainly in that category where there's no numbers you can put in that are going to make him look like a really good option at $6,100, but it's a 2-game slate. I mean, it's not that difficult for this guy to be one of the best point guard plays, especially talking about mid-range guys. He has played well from a fantasy standpoint in the series. His assist numbers are high. If he plays well, it's very easy, again, to see a closing lineup where Campazzo and Morris both play. Rivers hits the bench. So it's not something that, I'm advocating for in cash. I'm not advocating to just jam Campazzo into every tournament lineup you play. But if you just kind of go with that strategy of, not playing guys that just have no chance of getting there, but saying okay, this guy, people are going to shy away because he played 23 minutes last game and the two other guards closed over him. There's nothing about last game that I think makes him a worse play tonight than he has been any other night. I think if you didn't already know that Monte Morris and Austin Rivers could potentially close over him, I don't really know what to tell you. It wasn't like he was set in stone to close every single game. So that would be the only argument I can really make for Campazzo is people probably won't play him at this price tag after last game.
Okay. And by the way, the best odds you're going to get on that Morris prop are on FanDuel. The best you're going to get on Jokic are on DraftKings. I just looked over at oddshopper.com where you have all of the available books with these props that are legal in your state, wherever you're at. And FanDuel for Morris by far the best odds you're going to get on Jokic are on DraftKings. So be sure to shop around when you're looking at these. Odd Shopper is the best way to do that. It's entirely free, from the bet tracking to the notifications that you can set. And of course, the most important thing is to be sustainable. To have sustainable win rates and be profitable in sports betting, you have to shop around. You have to find the best odds. You have to find any single edge you can get. And the best way to do that is make sure you know where the best odds are at any given book on any given day with any given prop or bet. So check that out, oddshopper.com, everything totally free. All right, so let's talk about Michael Porter Jr. This is the one that, we could have probably started off with this. He's $6,900 on DraftKings, getting 39% ownership right now. He's 76 on FanDuel, 38% there. So is he coming off a strong game? Yes, absolutely. Following maybe the worst game anyone's played in the postseason this far in Game 4. It was horrible, right? And he really hasn't been great in this series, but he hasn't been dreadful like he was in Game 4. Is 6,900, given that it kind of reflects what we've seen from him this postseason, is that reasonable, or is it just a great value?
I think it's a good value. His usage has been down a bit in the postseason compared to the regular season. I don't think that's too surprising. But the other thing to keep in mind, and I talked about this before his last game, is that he has shot poorly in the postseason as well. So a lot of times when you see someone's usage drop a few points, it can just be as simple as he's missing shots, so he's not taking as many. Even last game, though, he only had a 13.4% usage rate, shot 10 of 13 from the field, but he grabbed 12 rebounds. That was something else we hadn't seen since the first game of the series, was him getting out there and grabbing rebounds. But I think, you can expect 34 to 36 minutes from him. He averaged 1.12 DraftKings points per minute during the regular season in the games he played without Murray. He's at about 0.88 DraftKings points per minute so far in the postseason with his poor shooting. But the biggest thing to me is that the salary reflects how he has played. And I think you mentioned that as well. It would be different if you were still talking about like an $8K or an $8,500 Michael Porter Jr. and you had to deal with concerns about, is he just going to keep losing usage in the postseason? But since the salary reflects what he's done to this point, basically, I think there's a lot more upside than downside on Porter here. Not to say he has a high floor. I mean, we're 2 games removed or 1 game removed from 8.75 DraftKings points. But my point is just that, he, I think, is priced for his current production, and his current production is at a lower level than like his actual ability.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's not like Portland has a stellar defense. So it really all depends on whether or not the ownership is enough to say, this is a spot I'm looking to come in underweight on, or saying he's the 4th highest owned guy, but he's there for a reason. I'm assuming are you just playing cash tonight, or are you playing tournaments?
Yeah, I'm playing cash.
Okay. Will he be in your cash lineups?
I have no idea. I wouldn't be surprised though.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. Rounding out the rest of the Denver Nuggets, right? We've hit Jokic, Porter, Campazzo, Morris. Then we've got to get into the Austin Rivers play, right? I know it's not fun, and nobody, I think Josh mentioned it this morning on the strategy show, Monday through Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern. It's a blast. You should be there, especially Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday with Josh and myself. But he played 47 minutes last game, 37 in regulation, played 37 minutes 3 games ago. Where do we settle in on somebody like Austin Rivers, who many people, I think what I was saying that Josh said earlier, would never have imagined that he was in a starting lineup in the playoffs, let alone in a rotation.
Let alone on a team that's up 3 games to 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, so for Rivers, I think he's a reasonable value because you have seen 3 games this series where he's played like 33, 36, and 37 minutes in regulation. You've also seen games where he plays 20 and I think 24. So not only do you have the volatility where Austin Rivers can just suck, but you also have the volatility where he might just not play a lot of minutes. I like I said earlier, I think you're going to get 2 out of 3 of Morris, Campazzo, Rivers in the closing lineup. I think that Morris and Campazzo are better than Rivers. So if I had to guess, which 2 it is, I would lean toward those 2, but it's certainly not a stretch to think that Rivers finds his way in there over one of them because you've seen it happen several times already. So I think the biggest thing is I definitely don't want all 3 of those guys together. I probably don't want more than 1 because I don't know that you're getting enough production from like 2 of them to make it worth it. Like if Monte Morris has a really big game, he's probably taking some of that production that Rivers could have gotten. And, same goes for Campazzo and Rivers together. So definitely wouldn't want 3, probably wouldn't want more than 1 of that trio, but with it being a 2-game slate, you can get away with 2, I think.
He's 13 of 24 from 3 over his last 4 games. So
yeah, that'll keep you on the floor.
It'll keep you on the floor, and it'll keep you. That always really scares me when I see that someone like Rivers, who is a 39% 3-point shooter this year, is 4 for 8, 2 for 3, 5 for 10, 2 for 3 from 3. When does that house of cards come falling down?
Yeah, and there's a couple ways to look at it because it means his floor is pretty low because if he's not playing well, he's probably not going to get as many minutes. But also, and it's something I know Alex points out a lot when you talk about players with a lot of volatility in their playing time, if he's not playing well, he probably wasn't really helping your lineup anyway. It's nice to know that if he is playing well, he has a path to 36 minutes because that's what you're really going to care about, especially for tournaments. Like when you're talking about trying to win, especially top heavy tournaments, you don't really care if your guy loses minutes when he's scoring half a fantasy point per minute because that lineup wasn't going to win anyway. You just want to know that if he's out there, hitting every 3-pointer, he has a path to stay on the floor. He's not like, if he's the backup to Nikola Jokic, it doesn't really matter how good he's playing. He's not playing a bunch of minutes. He has a path at least, which, the volatility does kind of make him nice at that salary.
What about Aaron Gordon?
I like the price. The power forward position is pretty weak tonight as well. We have obviously Davis, the question mark on Davis. We don't know exactly what the Lakers lineup would look like if Davis is out, whether it's going to open up Kuzma or Markieff Morris or not. So the position is not very good. I just keep being intrigued by Aaron Gordon because he's only averaged 0.84 DraftKings points per minute in the postseason. That's about what he averaged with Denver as well. And he's only averaging about 28 minutes per game in the series, but we saw him play 33 minutes in one of the games. So you at least know that that's there. And he's just talented enough where I think you can see him post a like he doesn't need to on this team, but I think he has the talent to post a bigger game. And the thing for me is that he's priced, if he's going to play 28 to 30 minutes and get you like 0.85 fantasy points per minute, that's going to be a decent score for $5,300. So I really don't mind Aaron Gordon here, mostly just because of the lack of options at the position.
And the last thing I'll ask you on Denver before we flip over to the Portland side is, are there any bench players, JaMychal Green, Paul Millsap, that stand out as decent value?
Well, I mean, Morris is the one, but
but we talk anyone we haven't.
Yeah. In addition to Morris, I mean, JaMychal Green has to be mentioned, I think, just because he's averaging about 19 minutes per game in the series. He's 3,300 on DK, 3,700 on FanDuel. He's only averaging about 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute. His usage rate is down from the regular season. His rebounding percentage is down. Paul Millsap's the one that's really been going nuts off the bench from a fantasy standpoint, but you're getting several minutes more per game from Green. He's the kind of guy where if you put a lineup together and you're looking to get some of the payout options in, he's going to end up in those lineups because he projects as a good point per dollar option. He's also the type of play though where I'd be very cognizant of projected ownership, because you really shouldn't be too concerned about like if he's getting a lot of ownership. Right now we have him at only 20%, so it's not a huge deal on a 2-game slate. But if that ownership were to come up, like if you start getting 30-35% JaMychal Green projected ownership, it's not a guy that's particularly likely to kill you if you don't have him. You can certainly move around with some other cheap options and just hope to get lucky, but I think he is one of the better projected based on minimum salary guys.
Okay, you want to talk Portland?
Yeah.
All right, let's make it happen. First off though, PrizePicks. I don't know if you guys have checked them out yet, but I would suggest you do. I've got a good one for them tonight too. I was just looking over there and also pretty much anywhere else. They are offering essentially the simplest fantasy game on the market. Say goodbye to sharks, lineup optimizers, mass multi-entry. All you have to do is pick 2, 3, 4, or 5 players available on the board to go over or under their projected score. Correctly selecting a 5-player lineup can net you 10x your entry fee. From the NFL, NBA to esports, PrizePicks has it, and you can combine your picks across all available sports. Download the mobile app in the App Store or Google Play today and make your first deposit to receive an instant deposit match up to $100. That's the best deposit match you're going to get when using promo Awesemo, AWESEMO. Simplify daily sports with PrizePicks today. Adam, I do that read now because I have a perfect one today to start off these lineups on PrizePicks and pretty much anywhere else. Yusuf Nurkic points is at 13.5. Now, if you look elsewhere, the over's juiced to 134. Here's the thing. His point totals have been 13, 17, 13, 7, 16. He's fouled out in 3 games. He's lost minutes as a result of several of them. And Yusuf Nurkic is a more than talented offensive player. So you're getting this at no odds at all, just 13.5. I love the over on Yusuf Nurkic, 13.5 points today. I want to know where you're at on Adam in a fantasy perspective, given that he's north of 7K.
I thought you had said Jokic. I was trying to figure out what the hell you were talking about.
I say Jokic? If I did,
no, you definitely said Nurkic every time after maybe the first time. But the first time I thought you said Jokic, and I was trying to figure out.
My fault. If I did, I meant Nurkic.
But yeah, so for Nurkic, I mean, I think that's a pretty good line on the points. But as far as fantasy goes, I do like him here, especially if he's going to get less ownership than DeAndre Ayton. I think that's a really important thing to pay attention to because they're at the same price point. And I think that they have very similar ranges of outcomes. Nurkic, I think, is the more volatile option, though. Ayton right now projected for less ownership, which is interesting to me, given the minutes. We've seen Nurkic foul out of 3 out of 5 games in this series. So not to say he's going to be in foul trouble tonight, but it's certainly a legitimate concern when he's fouled out of 60% of the games that we've played. But he played 32 minutes in one of those games that he fouled out. He played 33 in one of the ones that he didn't. And in the other one that he didn't, he played 27 minutes in 3/4 of a blowout. So if he does avoid foul trouble and this game's close, you can get 34 minutes out of Nurkic, who's averaged over 1.2 DraftKings points per minute in this series. So the ceiling is very high for his salary because him fouling out of games has kept the salary in check, whereas it would be higher if you had just gotten 34 minutes a game from Nurkic here. The floor is still pretty low though, because you do have to consider that he's only averaged 28 minutes per game because of the foul trouble, whereas somebody like DeAndre Ayton at the same price point has averaged 39 minutes per game. So there's an 11-minute difference there between 2 guys at the same price point. And Nurkic is the better per minute guy, but that's a huge gap to make up in terms of, if you're just talking like 50th percentile outcomes. So I'm really interested to see how the ownership shakes out there. I think in cash, if I can, I lean toward Ayton. If I can't find the $400, I don't really care. I'll play Nurkic. I think it's fine. But if I have my way, I would get Ayton over Nurkic in cash. But again, I'll just take the lower owned guy in tournaments between the two.
Jeff Williams asks, Drummond or Gordon, last man into the 555 DraftKings. It's coming in as a super chat.
I'm assuming Drummond starts. which isn't a lock. For a tournament, I think I would lean Drummond just because he has a higher ceiling than Gordon. I feel better about Gordon's minutes. I mean, Drummond's minutes haven't been there this series. There's no real reason to think it changes here. But then again, this is an elimination game for the Lakers. If Drummond actually does play well, maybe he does play more. I don't have a lot of confidence in either one. I think there's a better chance that at the end of the night, Andre Drummond put up some random game that wins you a tournament than Aaron Gordon did. If I'm playing cash, I would go Aaron Gordon over Drummond.
Okay. And our boy Arcathel's also with the super chat. What's up, brother? He says, saw the sweat last night, was pulling for you, ShipMyMoney. Still nice night. Did you have a sweat last night?
Oh, he maybe talking about the night slate. I tied for second in the $200.
Oh, nice. I'm assuming that is what he's talking about. It says, thanks, fellas. What's your 2 favorite studs out of LeBron, Jokic, and Dame?
Jokic, LeBron, I think, but that's still, I mean, it doesn't feel good to leave Dame out. But I lean towards those two.
All right. Well, that's a perfect segue into Damien Lillard then. Coming off an all-time postseason game. I'm serious about that. I think he was the first player to ever hit 12 threes.
Not just in the postseason, in any game ever.
Oh, really?
Yeah, whatever the stat was, what was his final line?
12 of 17, 17 of 24 from the field, 55 points. 9 of 10 from the charity stripe. That's all up here, man.
He was
Love me some Dame, right, Jordan?
I think he was the first player in NBA history to score 50 points, get 10 assists, and hit 10 3-pointers in one game.
Jordan's saying no.
Okay, well,
yourself?
ESPN lied to me.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, because Clay had the most threes, 14 against the Bulls.
Yeah, but he didn't have 50-plus points, 10-plus assists.
Right. No, he probably had like 1 assist.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it was an insane game. You say right now, LeBron over Damian Lillard, huh?
Yeah. I don't feel very strongly about it. I mean, I think, man, actually, God, it's close. I'll take it back because I think Lillard's going to play just as many minutes, if not more. Like, it's an elimination game for Portland too. James has been playing bad. James didn't just play 52 minutes though. I think it's really close.
Really? Okay. I got to go Dame here.
It's just like I keep, especially if Davis is out and it's elimination game for the Lakers. Like, LeBron could just pout and not care, but assuming he decides to play basketball, like he's just going to do everything. But so is Lillard. So I don't know. It feels really close to me.
I don't want to be this guy, but LeBron has not gone over 50 fantasy points once in this series.
He's been terrible.
Yeah, it's not great. Wow. The last game was shocking to me, though. If I told you LeBron shot 6 for 10 from 3, you'd be like, oh, he must have had a huge game. And he didn't at all.
I mean, he did okay for the minutes he played, but.
Yeah, but they were just so uncompetitive all game. 32. I mean, he was fine, but that's not superstar level. I don't know.
I take it back. I'll go. It feels like the answer is LeBron, but I just can't get over. And I mean, it's recency bias, but at the same time, like I just can't get over Lillard's just playing better than LeBron right now. Alex has Lillard projected 3 points higher. I'll use that as a tiebreaker.
Fair enough. And, another thing to consider, it's not like their ownership is separated by much at all. At all. So, or of course their salaries. LeBron's $200 less expensive on DraftKings. On Fanduel, he's $400 less expensive. So you're not getting a huge discount on ownership or on salary. Talk to me a little bit about Lillard, though, in this spot. What are you doing tonight just in terms of whether it's cash, tournaments, anything? Where does he slot in?
Yeah, I mean, more than happy to get to him. I think I'll get to Jokic ahead of him most likely. But I do think it's worth mentioning that this is a different slate than the last time Lillard played or last slate. It's a different slate than we had, I think it was yesterday, where point guard was really, really deep. Now you have Lillard, you have Paul, you have Dennis Schroeder, who may or may not still be the point guard on the Lakers, depending on his Instagram account.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, it's not a deep position. So I think you can definitely make an argument where you say okay, I'm going to play Lillard and then I'm going to pay down for Nurkic or I'm going to pay down for Ayton and forego Jokic, hope that Lillard stays within striking distance of Jokic. I think it's a perfectly fine stance. And if you go that way, there's no problem with it. Clearly you're getting a massive ceiling. He's going to play huge minutes. He's played at least 40 minutes in every game of the series except for the blowout. He has a 30.5% usage rate, 40% assist percentage. He's averaged 1.5 DraftKings points per minute in the series. So, I mean, like for context, he's averaging the same number of fantasy points per minute in this series that LeBron averaged during the regular season in the games that Anthony Davis didn't play. So,
wow.
He's giving you that same type of production, and LeBron clearly is not doing that in this series so far.
Crazy. Anthony Marcus, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt because I'm a good guy and assume that you're just trolling. He said Dame had 55 in a loss. It wasn't that impressive. You must not have watched that game because he took him to overtime, took him to double overtime, and then Robert Covington tried to posterize a defender from above the break, and then CJ McCollum took a 19-foot step back out of bounds. You'd almost think he had money on the Nuggets with that type of play.
I mean, the craziest thing, he scored 55 points. And like a lot of times if you see a line like that, especially if the team loses, it's like, he shot 30% or something. He shot 71% from the field and 71% from three.
I tweeted that exact same thing. I was like, it wasn't insane volume that you were getting out of him. It was 17 for 24. It's one of the most efficient games you're ever going to see on a 50-point game, ever.
He took more field goal attempts in game 1. He took the same number in game 2. He took more in game 3 than he did in game 5.
That's crazy. So it was pretty impressive. I was pissed that they lost that game just for his sake, but it is what it is. Speaking of Robert Covington, hey, even if that game didn't go to OT, you were happy to have Covington. We spoke about that a lot. That game was coming. Just give him the minutes. And eventually he has to do something. And he did. Can Covington run it back again tonight with a decent enough effort in game 6?
Decent enough, I think, being the operative word there. I'm not expecting another 40 points from Covington, but it just goes back to what you and I talked about before. He's playing enough minutes that you don't need that monster game. Obviously you'd love to get another 40 from him at 5,100 on DraftKings, but you don't need really anything close to that on a 2-game slate at a pretty weak position to be glad that you rostered him. He's averaging a little over 36 minutes per game in regulation in the series. He's averaging about 0.7 fantasy points per minute. In the regular season, he averaged like 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute. So, even if you expect him to get around 0.7 or 0.75 fantasy points per minute, as long as he plays 36 minutes, he's going to pretty easily give you a score at 5,100 that you feel good about. And when you think about the other options, like you have Jay Crowder in that price range, who I think is pretty similar to Covington. You have Aaron Gordon in that price range, who produces at a little bit higher rate, but is averaging 8 minutes less per game in this series. It's to me, Covington, especially on DraftKings at 5,100, still stands out as one of the better just point per dollar, lower mid-range guys. Fanduel maybe a little bit more difficult to get to at 6,200, where, he is more expensive than Aaron Gordon. He's quite a bit more expensive than Jay Crowder. But on DraftKings at that price, I still think Covington looks great.
So do I. He's averaging the 10th most minutes of any player in the postseason.
Yeah, he's playing a ton.
Damien Lillard is first in minutes. CJ McCollum is second. And Robert Covington's 10th. So Terry Stotts is running these guys till the wheels fall off.
They also got a double overtime game.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Good call. That will skew the numbers a bit in a 5-game sample now, won't it? They're still playing a ton, but you're right. It probably is right in the same ballpark as a lot of other teams. So good call. CJ McCollum played 51 minutes last game. Just absolute absurdity. Damian Lillard played 51, 52 minutes. Do you think McCollum is a guy that we can get to today?
Yeah, I do. His salary still hasn't really moved. I think you're getting around 38, 40 minutes if this game's competitive and doesn't go to overtime. You've seen his production in the series drop off a bit. He's just shy of a fantasy point per minute. That's not really too surprising when, Lillard's just going to, 1, play a few more minutes than he does during the regular season, and 2, he's just going to have the ball in his hands even more because, Lillard's going to do what he can to win these games. But you're still just getting so much playing time at a $7,600 or $7,800 price point, depending what site you're on. I still think McCollum looks good, even with the reduced production. This is more of a question for you because I'm not betting the game, and I don't know if you are or not. Are you concerned about the double overtime as far as the total here goes?
Yes and no. I haven't looked at any historical data on what percent of games go under or go over based on double overtime. But I want to say no. This series has pretty much sat around this high 220s range every day. It's not like they're playing a back-to-back. They've had rest. I guess the question is, does the extra, say, 10 minutes that these guys played, right? The starters played. Is that enough to have a significant enough or quantifiable impact 2 days later?
Right. Yeah. Like, I don't really know the answer either. And from a DFS standpoint, I don't really care because I'm not going to just remove one of the games. But
I'm not betting the total on this game, by the way.
Okay. Yeah. Like I'd be inclined to think it shades it to like, I think it makes it riskier. I just don't really know how much riskier. Like, it's obviously more likely that you get dead legs from somebody like Lillard or McCollum or Powell tonight than if they hadn't played double overtime. But yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot really actionable I can do with it. I just didn't know if you felt differently.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I just don't have anything I don't have anything solid that I can say this is why the game should go under, than these guys played a lot of minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I typically fall back on people betting on this game are very aware that they played double overtime last time.
Exactly. Yeah, and you probably get a lot of the public coming in on the under here, but it doesn't appear to have moved the line all that much anyway. So, I'm not hitting the total anyway, but. The reason I asked you if McCollum was playable, it was a bad, not the reason, but it was a bad way of phrasing it because his ownership on Fanduel is absurd. It's almost 60% right now. That's what we're projecting him at $8,000. On DraftKings, he's the 5th highest projected on player at 35%. It's kind of flat in that 30 to 40 range, but it's 60% CJ McCollum at 8K. That seems like a lot of ownership on someone like him.
There are literally 3 shooting guards on FanDuel tonight.
I know that's the problem.
And one of them is Austin Rivers.
For sure. There's no good pivot. There's no good way to pay up elsewhere at another position and find even a decent value there to get away from 60% McCollum.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what we talk about a lot where, just looking at ownership doesn't tell you the whole story. You have to consider their chances of being the top play, either at their salary or at their position. What are you going to do? If you want to play Austin Rivers with Devin Booker, fine. But plenty of people are going to do that also because that's the only other option, unless you're playing like Wes Matthews or something, or like Horton Tucker starts, but we wouldn't even know that probably before lock. So there's just nothing really you can do, I don't think, other than, probably come in. Honestly, probably just play even more Booker plus McCollum. Hope Rivers plays 25 minutes, and at least you beat the Rivers people.
All right. Anything else for Portland you want to hit on? Because we still got another game.
We talked about Nurkic. Yeah, so I'll mention Norman Powell still, I think, reasonable at 5,800 on DraftKings. He's another one that kind of fits into that Campazzo category of just the guy was awful last game, but you only have to go back 2 games to see, what he's capable of in one game. He played 51 minutes last game. He had 18.5 DraftKings points. He averages, since coming to Portland, about 0.8 to 0.85 fantasy points per minute. You're probably going to get 36 to 37 minutes from him again tonight. Still a reasonable salary, and I think people shy away a little bit because of that last game. And then you have Melo, who I'm actually somewhat interested in here. Again, the power forward position is not very strong. Neither is the small forward position. He's a $4,300 small forward on FanDuel, $4,200 power forward on DraftKings. He's averaging 23 minutes in regulation in this series. He hasn't been very productive, only 0.77 DraftKings points per minute, but he does have a 22% usage rate. This is someone that's not shy about shooting. It's more a matter of is Damien Lillard going to let him. But if he's making his shots, he'll take more of them. And so I think it's someone where, I'm certainly not saying like, oh, Carmelo Anthony's like the key to this slate, but he's getting enough minutes for his salary at a weak position that as long as he's not getting a lot of ownership, I have some interest. All
right. Let's talk about Phoenix and the Los Angeles Lakers. The Phoenix Suns, they could eliminate the Lakers tonight, man. This is doable. It's crazy to think about it. Most people had the Lakers. Like, if you're Phoenix grabbing the 2 seed, you don't want to face the Lakers. You don't want to work all season, play 72 games to face the LA Lakers. But here we are after 5 games. They dropped game 1 and they won game 1, right? Yeah. And then they lost game 2 and game 3 and then won 4 and 5. They're up 3-2. Do you think Davis guts it out tonight in a must-win game?
I feel like he does. I don't know, how many minutes he ends up playing. They've been saying he's day to day. They had that weird thing, before last game where they were cautiously optimistic briefly, and then he ended up not playing. If he's able to go, I can't imagine him saying like, yeah, I'll wait another day, especially with how bad this team looked last time. And he is someone that, he gets a bad rap for how often he goes to the locker room. He actually plays through a lot of stuff. He typically doesn't miss a ton of games outside of when he's like legitimately injured. So I'm assuming for now that he plays. Obviously I plan on being around to change my lineups if he doesn't. But I think the other reason that I lean towards assuming he plays outside of the fact that I think he would like to is I don't really know what to do if he doesn't anyway, because we saw Markieff Morris start last game and then not playing the second half. You saw Kuzma only play 22 minutes in that game. Marc Gasol started the second half over Andre Drummond. I have no idea what the starting lineup is going to look like if Davis sits anyway, so why not just assume he's going to play for now?
Two things. Chris Dunn says the Lakers were up 2-1 before Davis got hurt. When healthy, they win in 5. They might, but I also think we would be remiss to ignore the fact that Chris Paul was very clearly playing injured, and Chris Paul is a huge, huge part of this Suns' success. So is Davis more important in terms of, yes, I think we could all agree on that because they don't really have anybody else, but Chris Paul was pretty awful in those games. And I think that played into it as well. And the games 2 and 3 that the Lakers won were the 2 games that Chris Paul was playing the most injured, which was pretty obvious. Second thing here, if Davis plays, what would you take a bet? If I gave this to you, plus 150, plus 200 that Anthony Davis goes to the locker room at some point during the 4 quarters of the game.
You said plus 200?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And it can be for any reason.
I mean, what you're saying, like if he has to take a dump?
Like, so are you basically saying if we get an alert that he went to the locker room, I win?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he can't be going to the locker room at halftime, but yes, right. You would win if Anthony Davis makes a trip, makes an impromptu trip to the locker room for injury, illness, whatever it is. Anthony Davis leaves the game and he come back, it doesn't matter, but goes to the locker room.
I would take plus 200 there, especially if I get the Derrick Rose, piss break after the first rotation.
Okay. What would you do, chat? You got plus 200 on that, but you got to bet. You have to bet $500. Would you do it there, or would you only take a smaller bet on something as preposterous as that?
I mean, I would do 500.
Okay. A lot of people saying I'd take it at minus 200 at even money, minus 500. Yeah, I get that, but like that's still with a bet like that, there's nothing to really suggest other than the fact that Anthony Davis goes to the locker room a lot.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's like literally to me, it comes down to it can be for any reason as long as it's like not a normal time to go to the locker room. If it was Anthony Davis, there's a play where he looks injured and then he goes to the locker room, I wouldn't take it.
Okay. So you'd have to have like,
I need every out
the whole
available.
Spectrum of injury.
Yeah, I need every out available.
What's that?
I need like every out available.
Right.
He needs to retape something. He needs to piss. He actually gets hurt. Any of those, I win.
So the rules would be you get the alert, the notification. That would be fair for any reason.
Yeah, okay. I would take it. I wouldn't feel great about it, but I would take it at plus 200.
Right. Yeah. And you're not taking that at even money or minus 200. Like,
I'm barely taking it at plus 200.
Yeah. Too many ways that could go wrong. I think that's a good line if we're being honest. Devin Booker is one of those 3 shooting guards you spoke of. And for what it's worth, the other shooting guards on FanDuel, if you're looking to forego CJ McCollum or Devin Booker, would be Austin Rivers, Torrey Craig, Wes Matthews, and Horton Tucker. So that's extraordinarily fun. Where like is Devin Booker, who's also extremely high in ownership? Dude, the only thing is how many lineups are going to have McCollum and Booker, just like all of them on FanDuel?
But it's like the alternative, it's literally one alternative with Rivers. So I think, and I haven't built.
So it's still the optimal play, you're saying?
Yeah. Like I haven't built FanDuel lineups, but my pretty strong inclination just from thinking about it is I would rather just try and beat every team that decides to play Austin Rivers instead of Devin Booker or CJ McCollum. Assume I can pick up some value elsewhere. Like you can save money at either of the forward positions today. You can save some money at center if you don't go Jokic. You can save some money at point guard. I would just like to punish every team that plays Austin Rivers instead of CJ McCollum or Devin Booker. I don't really want to be mixing around with those teams, I don't think, because you're just not going to get – it's not like going to Austin Rivers, even though McCollum and Booker are so popular. Going to Rivers isn't going to get you some like unique build because every single person that doesn't go Booker McCollum is going to go Rivers.
Right. No, yeah, you're right. And just pretty much anybody else is suboptimal. When you talk about Phoenix at the top today outside of Booker, like, do we even need to spend any more time on Booker? Well, I guess you could speak to his DraftKings salary, right? That's probably a little bit more. There's probably more conversation that you could have there. On FanDuel, it's a pretty easy decision, but it's not like he's going overlooked at all on DraftKings either.
Yeah, and I mean, I think he's a good play on DraftKings too. He's playing huge minutes. You're probably getting 40 plus minutes from him if this game's competitive. He hasn't played great in the series, around a fantasy point per minute compared to like 1.14 during the regular season. But you have seen 2 big games from him. He's got a 30% usage rate in the series. I think that his playing time is just, or his salary rather, is just at a point where he looks like a pretty good value, just knowing he's going to play 40 plus minutes at a fantasy point per minute. And that's without factoring in the upside that he brings as someone that's capable of just lighting it up. So I do really like Booker. I think that, he is a little bit more expensive than McCollum, so I think maybe it's a little bit easier to get to McCollum, but also, again, I'm not, I feel very good about Booker as well.
All right. 19% likes to viewer ratio, close to 20, close to 400, about 84 away from that 400 mark. Your support is appreciated. We know we can't do this without you guys. It helps us a ton though, for sure. So get that up there if you haven't done so yet. When DeAndre Ayton comes into the fold here, his last game was bad, even on a per minute basis. I know they won by 30 and that game at no point was competitive, but he's having a great series. And I would almost make the argument that of all the surprises in this series, Austin Rivers playing well, Davis Bertans playing poorly. Just kidding. That wasn't a surprise. Just like a lot of surprises in this series. You could make the argument that DeAndre Ayton's performance against this Lakers team has been the most surprising and the most impressive.
Yeah, he's played well, and like his fantasy production has been down a little bit. He's around a fantasy point per minute, but it doesn't really matter when you take someone that was playing 31 or 32 minutes in the regular season, and now he's going to play 39 or 40 minutes, assuming that the game is competitive and he's not in foul trouble. The salary hasn't really moved that much, and I talked about it a little bit when we talked about Yusuf Nurkic. I just think the floor on Ayton is a little bit higher just because of the playing time. Nurkic has plenty of foul risks. We haven't really seen foul trouble yet from Ayton. There's certainly some potential for it, but I wouldn't say it's as high as Nurkic. He's just averaging like 10 to 11 minutes more per game in the postseason than Nurkic is. So if I can get to him in cash ahead of Nurkic, I will. If I have to settle for Nurkic, it's not the end of the world. In tournaments, right now we have Ayton projected on DraftKings for less ownership than Nurkic, which is very strange to me, but it makes me like Ayton a little bit more than I thought I would. 30% ownership going to Nurkic, 24 to Ayton. If those were to flip, I think I'd start to be more inclined to play Nurkic in tournaments because of that ceiling. But the point being, I think he's very similar to Nurkic. I think his floor is a little bit higher based on the playing time.
How comfortable are you with some of this value in Phoenix getting pretty considerable ownership? And by value, we're talking like 5,000 and down, right? Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, even Cam Johnson and Cameron Payne apparently getting a little bit of love today. We'll close this out with Chris Paul at his price point on DraftKings and talk about whether or not he's still playing with that banged up shoulder. But first of all, hit that bench players, or not only bench players, but the value players from Phoenix and what you're seeing in ownership.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ownership on Bridges and Crowder makes sense. Crowder's another one of these guys where it's like you've just seen how much people are influenced by what happened last game. He wasn't really getting ownership early in the series, even though if you went through his rotations, you could see he had lost some playing time to foul trouble, and that he was probably going to play 33, 34 minutes in games where he's not in foul trouble. Then he comes out and has a monster game, and he's one of the chalkiest guys on the slate, and then he has a bad game in like 32 minutes, last time. So I think you'll see the ownership lower than you did last slate, but nothing's really changed. You're still talking about Jay Crowder. You're talking about someone that's the fourth or fifth scoring option on his team. He's capable of knocking down some threes and having a big game, but that's not going to be the most normal occurrence. He's going to average around 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute. He's going to give you 32, 33 minutes, give or take. So he's a pretty decent value. I think Robert Covington looks a little bit better just because he probably plays a few more minutes. But I don't have any issue with Crowder. Bridge is kind of the same boat. He really struggled through the first 4 games of the series. He was better last game. He's someone in a competitive games. You're typically going to get 34, 35 minutes, maybe more if he's playing well. And the salary is just pretty cheap for someone that averaged 0.8 fantasy points per minute during the regular season. So, both of those guys I think are just sort of final pieces that the 4 positions aren't great. They look pretty good. If you look to the other guys you mentioned, Payne and Cam Johnson, I understand why Cam Johnson's projected for ownership. He's 3,100 on DraftKings. there's just value in finding guys that are 3K and hoping for the best. So if that's what you're trying to do, I don't have an issue with it. But I do think it's worth noting that Cameron Johnson played 13.3 minutes last game. He played like 6 minutes in the first half. He's benefited earlier in this series from foul trouble to Crowder, for example. And that's certainly, if Crowder gets in foul trouble again, Johnson probably benefits. If Johnson plays well, he can take minutes from Crowder or from Bridges. So there's a path for him to get there. And that is why some people are going to roster him at 3,100. I just think it's important to point out that like this guy could play, 15, 16 minutes. And then Cameron Payne, not really feeling great about his playing time last game either. He did play well. He played 19 minutes. Maybe he would have played a little bit more had the game been competitive to the end. But he still had a pretty elevated salary, given that I'm expecting Chris Paul to play normal minutes tonight. So not only will Payne probably play fewer minutes than he was earlier in the series, I'm expecting 24, 25 minutes from Payne, but more of those minutes are going to be with Paul on the floor, which obviously isn't beneficial. So don't feel nearly as good about Payne or Johnson as I do about Bridges and Crowder.
All right. And then lastly, quickly, Chris Paul, the price point has come down a lot. He's probable today. Didn't play a lot of minutes last game based on the blowout, but are we back to believing that Chris Paul is healthy? And if that's the case, how much do you like him at 6,500 on DraftKings?
Yeah, I'm treating him as if he is. Like, I know he left last game early and went to the locker room, but it was like a 35-point game when that happened. I assume that it was more just a precaution than anything. He's averaged 0.94 fantasy points per minute in the series, which clearly factors in the risk of him being injured. And if he's going to play 32 or 33 minutes here at 6,500, he's still going to look like a pretty good value. Even 7,500 on FanDuel, given the lack of options at point guard, he looks pretty good. And then you know how high the ceiling is because he's averaged 1.25 fantasy points per minute during the regular season, and we don't really know how healthy he is. If he's 100% today, he's one of the best values on the slate at 6,500. That's the kind of upside that he has. So there is obviously some risk, but I think it's baked into his price at this point.
All right. I'm a Tulsa dog. What's good, brother? He is super chat. My favorite NBA team, Loughran and Adam, second only to Lafayette, Alex, and Buzzard on the NFL shows. Appreciate all you do, brothers. Thanks, man. Appreciate the support. We'll close it with the Lakers. Before we do, Jordan, I was thinking about just skipping the Hall of Fame segment, but we had so many just huge, like one guy, just roll it so I can show you what happened the other night. First of all, we've got it simple. Comes in usually with doctored avatars, also avatars. We don't give free months out. If you want to get the free month, download the avatar at awesemo.com/avatar. Tweet your wins at Awesemo Hall of Fame, Awesemo HOF. Win $100 value, Awesemo Plus Platinum for the entire month. Everything included. You can get the Fantasy Cruncher add-on as well. But make sure to tweet us. You finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more to get that free month. Or if you just want to show off and showcase your wins, we'll put you up here too. But this is an EMAC 2024 avatar, Adam, with EMAC doing like the presidential thumbs up and then an Awesemo avatar symbol next to him. So
yeah, I saw it last night. It's a good one.
It's awesome. And then Hog 11 didn't send anything in, but he came in first place with an Awesemo avatar. The real Coach S, here it is. Just an absurd. Did you see this? Yeah.
I'm happy for him. I had dinner with him in San Francisco a couple years ago. He's a good guy.
That's awesome. Yeah, and he's been great to us in the channel and everything. So I love to see this. $280,000. He shipped NBA and MLB yesterday. $280,000. He won 25 tournaments, including the $800 NBA, MLB, and NBA main slate tournament. I mean, crazy. He says, I used the top stacks and boom bust tool on Awesemo a lot during this hot stretch from Awesemo. So that's amazing. Couldn't happen to a better guy. I'm really happy for him as well. And then to wrap this one up, Rip Racks 4K, nothing to sneeze at either. That's a solid win. And I think we still got 2,500 from J Bud's picks. Nice job there, third place. And lastly, 80K. We had this up there a little bit earlier, but PGA Flop Shot. Shout out to our PGA crew, our PGA tools, and this fella as well. Awesemo.com/avatars. Tweet us. Download the avatar. Put it anywhere. Get your name up here. Get your free month. All right, Adam, I'm going to throw it over to you. The LA Lakers. What are we doing? Well, we already talked about LeBron. Do we really need to exhaust that any further?
I mean, not really. Like, I'm pretty sure everyone watching knows that what LeBron is capable of. They know he's capable of having a monster game. The more we've talked about it, I lean towards Dame, if you're splitting between those two. But again, I don't think you're going wrong with any of these guys. But yeah, like LeBron's ceiling is higher if Davis sits, but his production actually didn't really change much during the year. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Okay. So I want you to just break down. I think the easiest way to go with the Lakers is break down how you anticipate them looking tonight if Davis is out for the second straight game.
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, like half joking, like, but last game you had Markieff Morris start. He played 10 minutes in the first half. He didn't play at all in the second half. Alex Caruso started in his place. They went with a smaller lineup. Marc Gasol replaced Andre Drummond in the second half starting lineup. He played 4 minutes and 22 seconds. Drummond played the rest of the third. Neither guy played in the fourth quarter of a 36-point game. So, like, I think Andre Drummond or Marc Gasol is going to start tonight. I'm sure that's really helpful for people. I think Alex Caruso or Markieff Morris or Kyle Kuzma starts in place of Davis. But you also have KCP, who's questionable. He played last game. If he's out, then you're replacing two guys in the starting lineup. I assume Caruso starts if KCP is out, but last time we had Wes Matthews do it. So there's a lot of different things Frank Vogel can do. I think that it's most important to, in situations like this, I think it's most important to have an idea who on the team is A, cheap, but who produces at a high rate. Like if you get Wes Matthews in the starting lineup, you shouldn't really care too much because he typically isn't going to do much. If we were to get something like Talen Horton-Tucker getting a surprise start, that's something you should be excited about because he produces at a high rate. If Kyle Kuzma starts, that's someone that you should be getting into your lineups because the extra playing time for him, he's someone that can take advantage of it. If Gasol starts, I still think his playing time is risky, but he's cheap enough that it gives you a value center if you need it. If Markieff Morris starts, I think so. Like if Markieff Morris starts, I'd feel better about Morris than I would if like Matthews starts because Morris actually can produce. But the problem you run into is the same thing you saw last game. He could very easily just get benched after the first half. So it's just a lot of moving pieces here. If Kuzma starts, he becomes someone I really want. If Horton-Tucker were to start, he's someone I really want. The center position I think is a huge dice roll, regardless of who starts. But obviously, you prefer the starter.
I mentioned this to Josh today on the strategy show because I think it's a kind of a contentious point with people not really knowing what's going to happen with him today. But it sure felt like Frank Vogel wanted Drummond nowhere near the floor and kept being forced to throw him back out there. So with Gasol getting 5 fouls within the first, 6 minutes of this or 4.5 minutes of the third quarter, if he stays out of foul trouble, what are you projecting for minutes tonight?
So going into last game, and this was with Drummond starting, I think I had it at 21 or 22 minutes apiece. Because remember, Gasol played really well to close out game 4 too.
Great game, yeah.
Yeah, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if Gasol starts tonight. Based on he closed out that game really well. He started the second half last game. Obviously, foul trouble just threw everything away. But wouldn't be surprising at all if Gasol starts. If Gasol starts, I think maybe you get like 26 minutes for Gasol. 26, 28 for him, the rest going to Drummond maybe. If Drummond starts, I'm going to go right back to like 21, 22 apiece. All
right. Yeah, it's not out of the question that Gasol starts this game. I think Frank Vogel's getting a little bit fed up with Drummond. Not it personally, but.
Oh, and the last, when I was running through all the potential starters, I'm $3,400 Alex Caruso. If he starts, feel free.
So
if we somehow get, I doubt we will, but if we somehow get the news in the next hour that Caruso is going to start in place of somebody, I would rather play Caruso than like $3,300 JaMychal Green, obviously.
If Davis plays, are you willing to entertain it, or is that just terrifying?
I mean, I'm not touching him in cash. I'd go there in tournaments.
No, not in cash.
Yeah, no, I would go there in tournaments for sure. And the reason is just, something we've talked about a lot on these smaller slates. Winning DFS tournaments isn't so much about being right or what you think is going to happen as much as being able to recognize situations where the field feels much stronger about something than you do. I don't feel particularly good about Anthony Davis. If he comes back, I think there's a good chance that if he starts, he's just trying to gut it out and he's, less than 100%, but I don't know. Nobody knows. But I think that the combination of him being questionable, people thinking he's hurt, people thinking he's not going to play, he's just naturally going to be much lower owned than a $9,400 Anthony Davis ever would on a 2-game slate. And that's just a position where if you could play the slate 100 times with Anthony Davis being ruled in after the Portland game locks at very low ownership on a 2-game slate, and you just play a ton of Anthony Davis every time, you're probably winning more money than if you just never play Anthony Davis.
All right. So summing up the Lakers, priority options, value options, since we're up against it here, do your best quick summation of what we're looking at with the Lakers.
I mean, LeBron's the priority, but again, I think it's pretty close between him and Dame and Jokic at the top. Kuzma, if he starts, is a priority. Caruso, I think if he starts, is a priority. We didn't really talk about Schroeder. He's been bad in the postseason. Whatever drama is going on with him on Instagram, I guess, he's not happy about something, but he's a reasonable option too. Like he's cheap enough at 5,900. He averaged 0.94 DraftKings points per minute without Davis, and with LeBron in the regular season, 0.84 fantasy points per minute when they both played. So, as the last guy in, I think he's fine, but I don't really have confidence in anybody on this Lakers team outside of LeBron to some extent.
All right. Favorite top tier player, favorite value option. That'll close us out for tonight.
Jokic at the top. God, value is gross on this slate. So I mean, if we're talking like cheap value, the cheapest guy that I'd be likely to get in cash if Caruso isn't starting would be JaMychal Green, but I would not feel good about it at all. I do like Monte Morris as a value option as well.
Yeah, I think Monte Morris, I'm not even talking super punts like 3K, but Monte Morris for sure. If Caruso starts, would he be your favorite, like legit punt?
Yeah, just because, and again, it's not a ringing endorsement on Caruso, but he's going to get you normally he's going to get like 0.7, 0.75 fantasy points per minute. He can play 28 to 30 minutes.
Could be worse. Spags and Greg coming up next. Remember, stick around 8 o'clock, the MMA strategy show with Jason Floyd and Pete Rogers, getting you ready for the weekend. You'll want to be there for that as well. We got you covered. All sports here on the Awesemo.com. Deeper dive presented by PrizePicks. Adam and I will be back here to close out the work week with you tomorrow. Good luck tonight, everyone. We'll see you back here soon. Wow, 4 more likes to 400. Come on. Come on.
What is up, guys? You got yourselves about 55 minutes left until NBA lock, and you got yourselves an MMA strategy show on the channel afterwards, but we'll talk about that in a second. But I am Chris Spags here for you once again for this journey into a 2-game do-or-die NBA slate, and I'm joined by my best pal on these streams, I guess, based purely on volume for the day, nerd-ass Greg Ehrenberg. How you doing, Greg?
Yeah, nothing to do with how we're friends, nothing to do with the time that we spend. I would say off the air, but we live on the opposite side of the country. We talk to each other for like 15 minutes after each show ends every day. So that's more a human interaction I get with most other people in my life. But yeah, 2-game slate. I am pretty interested to watch these games for sure. 2 elimination games. From a DFS standpoint, we're going to talk about this a little bit as we go on. No Anthony Davis news. That creates a little bit of headaches here, and definitely something that's going to impact all of our lineups in a pretty big way.
Yeah, we definitely have some items hanging over our head that we'll get to throughout the course of this show. But here's one thing you can do for yourself right now before we get started. First of all, you can hit the like button. That'd be pretty awesome. But second of all, you can go check out the @Awesemo_com Twitter handle and check out the pinned tweet to enter tonight's NBA giveaway. All you have to do is follow the instructions on the graphic and reply with whether Devin Booker or LeBron has more points tonight. One random correct guesser will get a free month of Awesemo Plus NBA. So that'll basically carry you through the rest of the playoffs here. You'll get all those showdowns in addition to whatever multi-game slates there may pop up with the NBA scheduling. So go check out @Awesemo_com on Twitter right now and get in on that giveaway to help out yourself and also our social media team who does such a great job getting everything out there for you guys. And also we have one promo code that is going to be exclusive for you guys today just for watching this show. If you use the promo code NBA live before lock at awesemo.com/join, you'll get yourself 15% off your first week of Awesemo Plus. So if you don't want to deal with the giveaways or our antics on here, you can go ahead and go check out the data for yourself at awesemo.com/join with that promo code NBA live before lock for 15% off your first week. So check it out. Obviously the data going to be crucial for these slates as they always are. And I've talked about some of my recent run of quality of earnings, I guess not the last 2 days, but besides that though, it all becomes courtesy of the ownership projections and using that to sort of figure out where the field's going to be and then attack accordingly. And that's the main thing. Our guys, Steve Buzzard, Awesemo himself, Tom, our CEO, all these guys made a lot of money over the years, just really knowing ownership and attacking it. So go check out that promo code NBA live before lock for your 15% off. And we'll talk more about PrizePicks in a little bit, but Greg, let's talk about the slate because I do feel like this is one slate where honestly PrizePicks looks very appealing with that promo code Awesemo to get your $100 in deposit matched on there, because you know what you have to do on PrizePicks, or you don't have to do in PrizePicks, you're gonna have to do on this slate. It's play guys like Monty Morris at great volume, play guys like Robert Covington at great volume. It is a slate, Greg, where there is not a lot of value to go to, and as a result, I feel like it's going to be a spray and pray spot, or you take the very chalky, obvious guys like the aforementioned Monty and Robert Covington.
Yeah, there are some, it's a 2-game slate. So, we talk about less popular plays. There are guys like, hey, if you want to take a chance on Anthony Davis and think that maybe he's only 18% projected ownership right now. So there are ways to differentiate a little bit. They're just very risky ways to differentiate. But even so, we're looking at Anthony Davis at 18% owned. So it's not like we're looking at somebody with single digit ownership or anything like that.
Yeah, and I would say, that is a good point in terms of overall lineup construction. But I guess my question for you would be, I mentioned to Greg before the show that to me, Monty Morris and Robert Covington, when I was crunching lineups and then sorting them out, I basically couldn't get to the 190 lineups that I'm putting in today without getting a little bit more of Covington in, getting a little bit of Monty Morris in, because those guys were sort of core lineup construction pieces. And I guess there's one other guy that we could talk about who's not a value option that I find to be a little bit more integral as well. But Greg, for the slate, I guess in terms of value plays, like, are you with me on Morris and Covington? Are you going different directions? Are you taking stabs at JaMychal Green, another value guy who could probably see a few less minutes as a backup center, but still the run's been around 20 minutes most game of the series? Are you willing to take your stabs on Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in the hopes that he does end up in the lineup that we don't know for sure yet, or Wesley Matthews? Like, I guess, what are you doing value-wise? Because you do have to save that money somewhere.
Yeah, so from a value perspective, Monty Morris is a little tough to nail down just because the minutes didn't come out of nowhere last game. Because he got a lot of those minutes in the regular season, but throughout this series, it had been Facundo Campazzo who was playing the bulk of the point guard minutes. Then last game, Morris ran really well, and they just left him out there. And then don't forget also, then he also got a big boost because we went to double overtime. So we got 10 additional minutes that he wouldn't have played otherwise. So we ended up playing 41 and a half minutes. Still, that means he would have played over 30 minutes had it gone into regulation. I don't think he plays those minutes quite again. I have him playing 25 today. I think that's more in line with what he's done so far in the series. I think it's going to be kind of a time split between him and Campazzo. I do think he's a better play than Campazzo, but I'm not quite as high on him as the field just because he's so popular. And I do think there's a chance that his minutes get dialed back a little bit. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say so popular, but over 20% on. But I think there's a chance that his minutes get dialed back a little bit more in line with what it was in previous games in the series.
Yeah, and I think, the issue that I have with Monty Morris is right now we do have Austin Rivers projected for slightly more ownership, and it wouldn't shock me based off the box score results from Morris last game. And I'm with you. I think the shot attempts were a little bit untenable. The minutes, I think I'm in the same range. Awesemo has 28 minutes for Morris today. I do feel like your 25-minute projection feels a little bit safer, given that you could see Campazzo earn a few minutes back. You could see Austin Rivers sneak a few more minutes in. Like, there are some ways here that Morris doesn't quite get that same run, but he has been one of the more productive players on the team all year long, basically in court time without Jamal Murray and Will Barton. Gets up to a 24% assist rate, 20% usage. So it's something to me that I observed earlier in the series and then has started playing Monty Morris a little bit more from game 2 on. And that's been a pretty good play. And then I've obviously had that massive outlier game last time out, putting up 15 shot attempts, not the most likely thing. But I do think he gets enough of a bump in performance that the other guys don't get, that I'm still willing to be heavy on Monty Morris. So he is one of the plays to me that I'll have more than half my lineups. And I don't feel the best about it because the price tag coming up is certainly something that caught me yesterday with Derrick Rose in a way I didn't love. But I do think Morris, just one play that makes it work. So talk to me though about Campazzo, Rivers, and Morris. Out of these three guys, is there any particular approach you'd have to them? Because it does seem like 2 of those 3 guys are pretty likely to close. And I think that's something that is important to keep in mind here for just the overall minute ceiling.
I feel the best about Austin Rivers minutes, and it's dumb because I don't even like Austin Rivers all that much as a real life player, but sometimes it doesn't matter what my biases are or what I think. I have to look at what the coaches have done so far in the series. And game 4, I guess it is. So game 4 notwithstanding, which was a blowout, Austin Rivers played 24 minutes. Other games in the series that have been competitive, he's played massive minutes. Game 1, 33 minutes. Game 2, that one was a blowout. He plays 20 minutes. And then game 3, 36 minutes. Game 4, that was a blowout, 24 minutes. And last game, 47 minutes. So of the trio of guards, I feel the best about Austin Rivers' minutes. And no, he isn't the greatest points per minute fantasy producer, but if he's going to be somebody who I have to expect plays well over 30 minutes based on what we've seen so far this series, he's the one that I lean towards as the best overall play.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I would say that to me, Morris and Rivers are probably comparably good defenders. And I think they both, to me, would be a little better than Campazzo, though the defensive rating numbers for the team and the court time these guys have had all year long, I think actually would put Campazzo as the best defender. But I think to me, I'm with you. I think Rivers sort of has pretty safe runway for minutes. The issue for me is is the upside going to be there for him where his rates on the year are still what I'm using. And he's been a 15% usage rate guy on the year, 13% assist rate. And those numbers have been lower for Denver, but I just couldn't knock him down anymore without completely killing his potential to get into my lineups. But I feel like that's the question for me too, is that Rivers, I think, can he be productive in that court time? And also, is there some way that Campazzo just kind of is super productive today and then he kind of hurts both Rivers and Morris by just siphoning enough minutes away from both those guys?
It's possible. I don't think it's the most likely scenario. If we look at Campazzo's numbers overall for the season, he started 24 games. He played 31 minutes per game in those starts. He averaged 26 fantasy points. The issue is that he's so priced up at this point relative to what we would normally expect to see from Campazzo. 6,100 on DraftKings. I don't see any upside in that price point. The Fanduel price is a little more tenable at 5,300, but it's a loaded point guard position. So Campazzo, I wouldn't be surprised if he takes away minutes from those guys, but just where the salary's at, he's not a very interesting play to me.
So other value players, I do think Denver is a team that you can get a few bits of value from. And JaMychal Green still in play for me, which I have not the best feelings about. Did cut his ownership down as much as I could, but still I'll be a little bit above the Fields projection at 19% ownership on DraftKings today. And I think Marcus Howard also, just because of the minimum salary, did land in a few lineups of mine, which I don't feel the best about. But for you, JaMychal Green and Marcus Howard are these guys. Also, I'm really leading with the shit parts of it. I do think the value is very important to figure out what you're going to do with the rest of the spots. Marcus Howard, JaMychal Green, do either of those guys make your lineups tonight?
Marcus Howard does. I mean, I have him. It's funny too, because we look at the context of the slate. There's guys to pay up for that I think have massive ceilings. LeBron, especially if Anthony Davis doesn't play, and we consider the gravity right here. The Lakers, the defending champs, they might be going home in the first round here. I assume that LeBron is going to play all the minutes he can handle. He might not even come off the court today. We might see 48 minutes of LeBron James. I think that's within the realm of possibilities. Damien Lillard, we know his upside. Nikola Jokic, there's obvious upside there, although I think his minutes are probably a little bit capped compared to guys like Damian Lillard and LeBron James. But with that in mind, we really need value. And I don't think we need any of these value plays to have massive nights. So Marcus Howard, I only have Marcus Howard project for 12 fantasy points, and he still makes it into about 20% of my lineup just because of how strong the pay-up options are.
Yeah, we are on the same page. And Awesemo a little more generous with that projection for Marcus Howard. 13.7 DK points is the projection. I've got him at 13.9. And I like during the year, he had a 27% usage rate. He wasn't seeing a ton of court time, obviously, but he is a guy who can get shots up and can also assist at a decent rate too. So to me, as a bench play at minimum salary, I'm with you on it. I don't have the most comfort with it, but if he opens up something that can make it work, there really aren't. There isn't a Boban on this slate that you could even talk yourself into as a starter, I think, to get there. And that's something, unfortunately, you just got to swallow with some of these ugly plays and just kind of deal with it. So here's one play, Greg, that I'm going to be on the other side of the ball. And I mentioned to you, I think briefly before we started the show, but Damien Lillard is a play that you look at that last game. He was so fantastic. If you're watching the game live, was really doing a lot of amazing things. And I think adding to the credibility of his case to be the most exciting player in the league, something that's been debated about on the channel a little bit recently. But I do think in that spot, like a 20% usage rate, he did play a ton of minutes. So it was double overtime. He's not going to play quite that many minutes here, but you got to expect he's playing 40 or 42 minutes here. That is price tag with LeBron also in an elimination game. And you do have other weapons for Portland who should get a little more air to breathe after Lillard did that last time out with shooting with such unreal efficiency that I think Lillard is a play to try to get less in the field of. He will be owned by 40% of the field, and we'll do money time here coming up in 15 minutes for both Draftkings and FanDuel's top 5 plays or top 5 projected owned plays. But Lillard in the spot, I think I have to come under on it. And I don't know if that's what you'll be doing today, Greg. And I don't know if even a lot of people out there will be doing it because the projections for the other guys, I think are going to look a lot better for most projection systems out there. But I feel like coming under on Lillard is one move you just have to make tonight.
He's in around half my lineups right now. It's really hard for me to avoid the kind of upside that. And I mean, the overall plays here, how would you, well, I guess also part of it, because you're assuming, no, that actually doesn't. I was going to say, because I thought that maybe you were assuming that Anthony Davis is out, but we talked about that before, and you're assuming he plays. So with that in mind, are you getting to LeBron James at a decent clip then if you're not getting to Lillard as much?
So I did give Lillard a thumb up just to get him to about half of the field. So I'm going to have him about 20%. LeBron, I'm getting 28%. The guy that I'm finding more relevant, I guess, to my lineup construction, which I did have to turn down a little bit, was Nikola Jokic. And then part of it too is that I think Chris Paul is a guy who I will be above the field on because he's too cheap to me. And I think the minutes for him based on last game, he would have been around 33 minutes based on this first half run. So that game was a blowout, obviously. But that to me is that we're like, I can get Chris Paul, which is one of the better value plays on the slate with how I'm grading it out. And then as a result, if Lillard is projecting under 5X, which he is for me, and then, McCollum projects well, Covington projects well, Nurkic projects well, that's sort of the symptom of it. And it doesn't feel great, Greg, but I think that's the stand I had to make.
I have Jokic, Lillard, and LeBron all projected very, very similarly. So it's hard for me to really say that one of them is a vastly better play than the other. I have all of them in right around half my lineup, so a little bit less. And I just have a bunch of crappy value plays that I'm mixing in with them. I think that any of these times where we start to get elimination games, there is potential for Nikola Jokic to play probably not 40 plus minutes, but he's going to play somewhere 36 to 38 minutes. Damien Lillard, I would be shocked if he plays under 40 minutes. Like I said before, LeBron might play all 48 minutes today. That's within the realm of possibility. So with that in mind, I think the upside due to the circumstances is so high for these guys that I want to try to load up on them. And then just I'm biting the bullet and playing some crappy value guys. Marcus Howard, we talked about before, him being one of them. And then overall right now, my actual favorite value play from a contrarian perspective is Marc Gasol.
Oh yeah, Marcus, that's an interesting one because he did get in crazy foul trouble last game in a way that hurt him in the first half and then the second half in addition to the blowout. So here's something with the ownership, and I'm sort of spoiling money time here, but I think we have to talk about it just to sort of get to the point. So LeBron right now projects for 44% ownership on DraftKings according to Awesemo's ownership projections. Again, if you want them for yourself for every slate, use that promo code NBA live before lock at awesemo.com/join. That's exactly how you think it's spelled. But we got LeBron, Jokic, and Lillard projected for all around 40%. And I think because of the fact, like I am getting a little bit less LeBron, I am getting a little bit less in the field of Lillard as well. Like Jokic is the one that I'm over on. And I think it's the center positionality of all that where Jokic, I do have projected to be the best raw play in terms of points on the slate, as is Awesemo as well. So it's not necessarily a contrarian take. But like Awesemo has Jokic 5.5 fantasy points above Lillard, which is close for, adjusting for randomness and all that. And LeBron, Awesemo is projected for 49 minutes with the assumption that Anthony Davis is in, or 49 fantasy points, excuse me. So like it is a pretty big disparity, I think, or big enough for me to justify the Jokic exposure, but it is a spot where certainly I could be left holding the bag.
Yeah. Also, gut feeling, I think Marc Gasol starts at center for the Lakers tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he started the second half last game,
yeah.
So I think that's not crazy at all.
he started the second half. He got in foul trouble. He came out really quickly. I think off the top of my head, he came out like 3 minutes into the second half, but there were so many factors working against him. Foul trouble, which it's been an issue for him this entire series, but foul trouble for Marc Gasol. And then the game was so one-sided, but you start to wonder, he started the second half. Also, I've said this a bunch of times during the postseason. I think Marc Gasol is a vastly better fit for the Lakers offense alongside Anthony Davis and LeBron James and Andre Drummond is, because Marc Gasol is a better defender. He's a better passer. He's a better shooter. So it's better for floor spacing. I think he fits better. And given that he started the second half of last game, I think that Gasol is going to start tonight, and he's projected for almost no ownership right now. We have him projected for 8% ownership on Draftkings. On Fanduel, Gasol is projected for 3% ownership. Given those kind of numbers, it's, to me, that's somebody I want to be overweight to the field on, especially when I'm hurting for value. Fanduel's a little bit different because he's priced up to 5,200, but on Draftkings, where he's 4,000, I think that he's one of the better value plays on the slate, especially when there just aren't other guys that are contrarian plays to go to.
So is he a good play? Because you said you're playing it right now where you don't know if AD's in, but like I think if you assume AD's in, like Gasol's rates are not quite as good with AD active as they are without AD on the court, in addition to, I guess, whatever other centers would be in play. But like that's where his big rate jump comes in court time without AD. And I think if AD's in, to me, Gasol kind of becomes the same, 0.88 fantasy point per minute guy on the year, which could be enough for value. But I guess that's a question I have for you with how you're handling Gasol right now. Is that on the assumption that AD plays or no?
So we talked about this a little bit before, and I'll make it. I have no clue, first of all, Anthony Davis is going to play or not. My assumption right now is he plays and is limited. Given the groin injury he suffered the other day, I can't imagine he's back to 100%. Also, this is Anthony Davis. How many times have we seen him get injuries that have either lingered, injuries he wasn't able to play through, games where he left games early due to injury? So I think it's far-fetched. I think he's going to be 100% tonight. I still think he's going to give it a go, because look at the circumstances of this game. The Lakers down 3-2, the defending champions. Are they really going to go? And also they lost by a gazillion points last game. So I have to think Anthony Davis, even if he has nothing to offer, he's going to try to play tonight. That's just my gut feeling, but I don't think it's going to go well. So with that in mind, I'm going with Marc Gasol playing 22 minutes right now. And I think that Anthony Davis is going to be a little bit limited. I have Anthony Davis playing 29 minutes, and I'm hoping that should be enough to make Marc Gasol viable for this slate, at least enough to make me go overweight to the field on him.
So you're basically where the Awesemo minutes are as well. Awesemo currently, our Awesemo data team has Anthony Davis at 30.4 minutes, Gasol at 20.1. So that's basically in line. And yeah, as a result, to me, like, I don't think Davis is playable at that price tag. You could sort of absorb the risk. And as Greg might have seen earlier today with our producer, Tyler, actually, I don't know if it might have actually been on the MLB show. So you might have missed this, Greg, but our producer, Tyler, was showing off his groin. And I guess he was showing off his response to a groin injury he had, I believe, in high school playing a sport. Now, he was not showing off his groin, though he was showing off his groin in context of the flexibility and the movement he had. And he was explaining the way that it could go, because I guess he had also had a torn groin, and was mentioning how like AD like probably can play through it, but also the mobility's not there. And it did kind of look like that from whatever videos were out there pregame of him shooting around last time out, that he wasn't really he wasn't moving a lot side to side, was kind of limited by it. But I agree with you. I think he plays today, but he's greatly limited. So take him out of your player pool. But I do think he's not going to hurt LeBron, because LeBron's still going to get more minutes without him. B, assuming LeBron doesn't do the thing he does where he throws a temper tantrum like he did in the second quarter of last game, and just basically doesn't shoot and tries to pull the old Kobe thing of just letting everybody else shoot until they realize they're bad players. Like, I do think LeBron goes, as hard as he can today. And I think he doesn't hurt LeBron, but I do think he hurts Drummond. I do think he hurts Gasol. And I think that's sort of the issue for me, is that I don't have the faith in Gasol if AD's in.
Can we rewind something for a second?
Are we talking about Tyler's groin?
Yeah. So first of all, that was not true. He just started taking his pants off. He's like, oh yeah, groin injury. Look, Anthony Davis. Like there's no point. He didn't tear his groin in high school. What did he? Playing video games? Like what did he do to tear his groin? That's totally.
Tyler was an athlete. I know it doesn't. You guys don't see our producer Tyler very often. Jordan's clearly the more of the fame hog amongst our producers. That you guys all know him because he's a superstar. But Tyler behind the scenes, he was like a superstar athlete, pole vaulter in high school, and then also I think you're saying it was soccer or football. Tyler might be in the chat maybe, but he was saying like he's in Texas too. They take sports seriously there.
Yeah, once again, pole vaulting. Just this is more code, right? This is another reason why he needs to take his pants off for you.
Poor Tyler. Tyler just trying to be helpful, teaching me about groins and such over Zoom, and has to take a perverted turn. All I'm saying is, based off my limited time as a medical doctor with our producer Tyler, I can say that it did seem like he'd be limited in a way, but still probably good enough to go. And the Lakers did give quotes to that effect as well, that it was more about pain tolerance than AD actually hurting it more, and that's something to, maybe it is just all about him being able to work through it. And AD certainly known for working through injuries many a time, as best he can, at least. LeBron, for you then. So I guess based on all this, it leads me to believe that you're not a big LeBron guy on the slate.
So I still, like I said, I have LeBron, Jokic, and Anthony Davis all really even. The one I actually ended up with the least exposure to as of now is Jokic, just because of positionality. There are a bunch of centers I like on this slate. I think Eytan is viable. Nurkic is viable. I mentioned I like Marc Gasol as a contrarian option. Fanduel, there's only one center to choose from. And then on DraftKings, when we have the center options, they're pretty deep. Covington also has center eligibility. It's hard for me just because of the positionality. Also, Jokic is a little bit more expensive than those guys. And then, like I said, also, I'm giving him less minutes than I'm giving to LeBron and Damien Lillard. So he's actually my least favorite of the three. But I mean, all of them I'm getting to at a fairly decent clip. Like none of them's an outright fade or anything.
Okay. So yeah, look, I think the field's projected ownership to me is about right. I couldn't quite get to those numbers because I don't have Dame projected as well. And I have Jokic projected to be the top play on the slate. And that's tends to be hard for me to ignore relative to my sorting process. But I agree. Like if you could get these guys all to 40 to 50% and then just have them there and cycle through them. And there's a decent possibility here, the 2 elimination games, or they were all elimination games, but it is an elimination game in particular for Lillard and for LeBron and Jokic. It'd be nice if they could win this one. They would, I'm sure, love to not have to do a game 7, but still for them, not necessarily a must have. So I get it. And I just gotta go with the old Yokemeister one more time. Nobody calls him that, but I will for today. Michael Porter Jr., since we're talking Nuggets here, what are you doing with MPJ? Got back on track last game, rebounding a little better. Talked in the pregame about how he wanted to be more aggressive, did come out more aggressive. And I think to me, this has been something that made me very happy because he's still cheap. I think he's actually cheaper than he was last slate. I've been riding on the Michael Porter Jr. train pretty much all series long. Paid off really well last time out, Greg, but I'm going to go back there again today heavy. To me, he is one of the most important parts of the lineup today on DraftKings, which is terrifying, but I do think getting above the field is something I've considered very important today for Michael Porter Jr.
Yeah, I'm not quite Paul vaulting on Michael Porter Jr. I haven't played him much in this series, and it's not really an issue with Michael Porter Jr. himself. It's just where he's priced, and that I have all of these postseason slates the way that I've been doing minutes projections. And like I said, I'm giving LeBron massive minutes. I'm giving Damian Lillard massive minutes. My lineups continue to shape up to be stars and scrubs lineups. And that just kind of ends up guys like Michael Porter Jr. They get pinched a little bit for me because he's priced in a range where if I'm going stars and scrubs, you just don't get to somebody who's 6,900 on DraftKings or Michael Porter Jr. 7,600 on FanDuel. It's hard to totally avoid him on FanDuel just because of the positionality, but I'm underweight to the field on him on both sites just for the reason of where he's priced. I'd rather go stars and scrubs than get to Michael Porter Jr. kind of in that upper mid-tier range.
As you're talking about the stars and scrubs thing, what do you think is the likelihood, or I guess the potential for a lineup with Jokic, Lillard, and LeBron to actually win it all? Because that is something that happens recently. I do feel like it's more likely if you have one of those guys with a slate breaking ceiling at 8K more so than 10K guys. But what percentage, I guess, what are the odds you think it could happen? And what's the percentage you think that particular grouping will be owned? Because I feel like there's going to be a lot of lineups that will think that's the move. And I feel like there is a slight chance it is, but I feel like you're going to have such a shitty lineup that's going to be next to impossible.
I think it actually has less to do with the value plays. It's just going to matter what these guys' upside are. Like if all these guys hit their ceiling, I don't even think it matters how crappy the value plays are. Marcus Howard could score 8 fantasy points and land in the optimal lineup. We had this the other night. This was a slate where I was doing the live before lock with Alex because Eric's power went out right before we were about to start the show. And somebody asked the question. They said, what is the viability of building lineups with all 3 of the expensive guys on that slate? I don't remember exactly where. I remember Jokic and Dame were 2 of them. I forget who the third one was. And at the time we'd said it's really hard to do with the value that's available to us. And it didn't matter. Ultimately on that slate, the value plays didn't end up being good because all of the studs went off. So I'm going to really quickly just throw this into a lineup and see what this allows in leftover salary. So if you play Jokic, LeBron, and Dame on DraftKings, you have 3,780 for remaining salary.
So we're playing JaMychal. We're playing Marcus Howard probably.
Yeah, this is a shit lineup for sure. All right, so
we are. I mean that saves us a little bit of money, so we can afford such illustrious names as Kentavious Caldwell-Pope,
who's questionable that we don't even know is playing.
Yes, Cam Johnson should be playing, and he's 3,100.
Actually, I don't mind this, to be honest. I thought it was going to be bad, but listen, Marcus Howard, I think he scores over 10 fantasy points tonight. I think JaMychal Green scores over 10 fantasy points tonight. I think it's viable. It's not my preferred build, but if I was to quickly look at the ownership projections, I'll quickly estimate what I think, what percentage of lineups will have all three of them. It's going to be, I mean, not a high number, but I would guess about. I'm doing really quick math on my phone. This is really exciting radio.
No, I'm doing it too on my computer because I feel like if you just multiply their three ownerships by the field, that would be the way.
That's and then
I have it as 2,328 lineups based on our ownership projection would have those three together.
So about 7%.
Yeah, so that's I mean, not an insignificant amount. It's an approach. Like I wouldn't hate it there. I don't think it would pop up for my optimizer sorting because I think it would come up under the projection threshold. But if you wanted to make that play, like I think of all the nights to make that play, I do think this could be certainly one of them because you basically just need the middle class to all not be great. And I think it's very possible in elimination games that the middle class is just not that great.
All right. And then just to be fair to everybody, we just did it for DraftKings purposes. Let's look at Fanduel now to see how viable it is on Fanduel. Fanduel, I just quickly did. It looks like that somewhere in the neighborhood of 6% of lineups are going to have all three of them on Fanduel. Damien Lillard, 11,000 on Fanduel. LeBron James, 10,600. And then we have Jokic, 10,800. So that would leave us with 4,600 in leftover salary for the final three spots. Actually, it's funny enough. It looks like it's going to be a higher owned combination on DraftKings than Fanduel, but I actually think it's easier to get to on Fanduel.
Yeah, I would agree with how Fanduel works. I think that is. And I actually think I put in one lineup on Fanduel because I had some voucher and I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? Fanduel, if you want me back, I'll take it. And I do think I got in a good amount of stars on there. And then the value certainly is specious. And if you drop down at shooting guard on Fanduel, you're definitely getting a different construction. We are at the halfway point of the show, though. And I do owe you guys some money time here. So let's flip the hat and see. Oh, we got ownership a minute ago, too. That really works out well. So it's money time here. Hooray. Money time. Gonna give you guys the top 5 owned plays. You can see my enthusiasm ramp down with money time since its inception, but Lord knows we got to get these projections out there. And of course, if you want to get all the ownership projections and player projections and the boom bust tool for NBA, or really all the tools we have for every sport, go use that promo code NBA live before lock at awesemo.com/join. That is 15% off of the weekly cost of a package on there. So go use that promo code NBA live before lock at awesemo.com/join. Top 5 projected plays, which always come courtesy of those Awesemo ownership projections. Number 1, expected owned play on DraftKings, Michael Porter Jr. Oh boy, 47%. Number 2, LeBron James at 43%. Number 3, now Chris Paul at 41%. Oh boy. Number 4, the chalk really rising up here might make me revisit some things. Number 4, CJ McCollum at 40%. And number 5, Damian Lillard, 38.4%. On FanDuel, we have Devin Booker at 59%, CJ McCollum at 57%. So that is the shooting guard play that everybody will be on. LeBron James, number 3 at 41%. Number 4, Damian Lillard at 40%. And number 5, Robert Covington, projected for 39.4% ownership on FanDuel. So Greg, here are the plays that I like on the slate today. They're the top 5 we just read out on DraftKings.
Yeah.
And Chris Paul, McCollum, like them a lot, Greg. I don't know about you with Paul and McCollum, but give me your thoughts on these guys. You cover the studs. Let's get to the middle tier because you've already talked enough about Michael Porter Jr.
Yeah, so Michael Porter Jr., especially with that ownership, I think I want to be underweight to the field on him. He's the most popular play on the slate. And listen, I think he has upside that I don't think it's warranted, especially not the way that I want to make builds for this particular slate. 47% for Michael Porter Jr. on DraftKings. FanDuel, a little bit less, coming in at 38%. But still, I think somewhere in the neighborhood of 25% exposure to Michael Porter Jr., that's something personally I think works a little bit better for how I'm looking at lineups today. I agree with you on Chris Paul, though. I think he's the overall best play on the slate. He's the player that I have the most exposure to. The salary's too low, and I still think that people have this feeling that he's banged up, and I don't think it's the case anymore. The last 2 games, he has 15 assists. He only has 2 turnovers. I understand he left last game a little bit early because he had that run-in with Wesley Matthews. He was holding his shoulder. He went down, but almost immediately he got up, walked off, came back. He was joking around with his teammates on the sideline. He seemed fine. The Suns were up like 35 at that point. There was no reason to bring him back. I don't think it was all that I don't think it was all that serious of an injury. I think Chris Paul is 100% right now, and he's not priced like it.
Yeah, look, I think you got to hope that he's going to be there and close to full strength. And actually, so because of his ownership coming up, it looks like I'm going to get a little bit more reasonable amount of Chris Paul, but I'll have him in half my lineups today. And to me, I think that's sort of it. It's a sort of a coin toss with Chris Paul, whether he's going to be a very high upside guy, whether he's going to, somehow get hurt again. Though I agree with your take that it was a blowout game. It was a game that was already out of control. Like he went to the locker room. I think if he had somehow, the game had been competitive, he probably would have fought that a little bit more. Yeah, I think Chris Paul, to me, just 41% expected ownership. If you're getting him at 50%, I think a fine play. And I guess the question I would have for you, because I know the deeper dive guys talked about it, Greg, is that on Fanduel, are you willing to go to Chris Paul quite as much because he is a little more expensive there? I still think he's a good play, especially if people won't play him quite as much because of the price tag. But just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so even at 7,500, I don't mind him, and a lot of it has to do with positionality. So I think pretty clearly the top two the top 2 point guard plays on Fanduel are Damien Lillard and Chris Paul. So earlier in the show, I said I thought the point guard position was fairly loaded on FanDuel, but it's relative to what some of the other positions are. And in the context of it being a 2-game slate, I think Lillard and Paul are really strong point guard plays on FanDuel at 11,000, 7,500. If you want to go down, I think Dennis Schroeder at 6,300. I know nobody's going to want to play him after what happened last game where he totally sucked, but everybody on Lakers sucked last game. And could that happen again? Yeah, maybe, but it's a 2-game slate, and we're going to have to roster some of these guys on the Lakers. And Dennis Schroeder, I still think, is a little bit underpriced relative to what we would normally expect from him, especially when we don't think that Anthony Davis, even if he plays, is probably not 100%. I don't know that anybody's advocating for saying that AD is 100%. It's just going to be, how many minutes do they get out of him? What does he look like when he's on the court? And how does that impact the usage for some of the other guys? So I'm on Paul here. I know I've already seen some people a little riled up in the chat that don't think that he's healthy. Personally, I think he is. And even if he isn't, he was so good the last couple of games when he's been on the court that if this is him at less than 100%, like, what does it matter? He had 9 assists. He had 9 assists and 0 turnovers 2 games ago. If that's a compromised Chris Paul, then whatever, it's still terrific production.
Yeah, look, I'm in agreement here. And I think to me, it's also something where if people are going to be risk averse about it on a 2-game slate and you have a guy who could potentially, like if the Lakers keep this one competitive, they are a 2-point favorite at home, though I know a lot of people are thinking this is going to be a rollover win for Phoenix because of how the Lakers looked last game. I do think the Lakers are going to fight as much as they can. I do think out of the 2 games, though, if you're going to say out of, all the teams on the slate who are just going to roll over and die on this one, I think the Lakers have to be number 1 too, just based on what we saw last time out, based on the injuries, based on all this stuff, the complaining heading into the play-in game. Like really a lot of things have been blowing kind of the wrong direction for them. But I'll ask this question, Greg. Do you agree with me that the Lakers are the most likely just completely roll over and die if things don't go their way in the first 2 quarters of play?
Yeah. Well, also don't forget, I think the Suns are vastly better if Anthony Davis is hurt or doesn't play. I think that there's a couple of things that are impacting the line right now. I think number one, I think a lot of people are assuming that Anthony Davis is going to be, and I'm still not sure that's the case. And something else I think is a little telling. I don't know if you noticed, but about 15 or so minutes ago, we got news that KCP is playing today. He was listed as questionable. There's no update on Anthony Davis. So if they were that confident that Anthony Davis was playing, wouldn't they have given us that update? I mean, this is a little, tinfoil conspiracy hat stuff, but listen, it's a 2-game slate. We have to look into some of this stuff. But if they were that confident that Anthony Davis was playing, wouldn't they have just ruled him in at the same time they ruled in the other player on the team who's questionable?
It does seem a little bit odd. I'm with you on that. And I guess to me, that's part of it for me right now. And I guess it does lend credence to your Gasol play where like Gasol's playable right now. And then if Gasol does get AD not out there, like Gasol's going to be a much better play. And I think that's something that our pal Eric Lindquist has talked about before, which actually, he does give a lot of great advice amidst us completely mocking him every single time. And I do think that was one thing that he's talked about in the past is that if you like somebody in the late game and like they look decent enough, there was one example that he had with Marcus Morris for the Clippers, not yesterday. I was all over that play then until old Derrick Rose tried. Derrick Rose will never be forgiven by me after yesterday. But point being, Marcus Morris, like in a game where like, hey, Kawhi and Paul George are active or one of them is going to be active. Like he doesn't look like a great play at the first part of the day, but then you get the other guy rolled out. It's like, wow, Marcus Morris is now one of the best plays on the slate. I think that could easily happen with Gasol here and to a lesser extent, Andre Drummond, obviously needing Drummond to start there to feel some degree of confidence. But like, I think I'm with you on the concept here, But I also think that's why I don't have an issue with LeBron. Like LeBron's going to get really the lion's share of everything. If AD's in, I think still, but if he's out, especially, like it's going to be up to LeBron. If they try today, LeBron's going to be trying. If they don't try at all, LeBron will throw them all under the bus and make this game look bad. And I think that's sort of the risk profile, but also the upside of the Lakers playing them without knowing everything right now.
So here's a question. And also, I still have, if you ask me what are the odds of Anthony Davis playing, I'm still going to say 50-50. I really don't know what to make of it. Before you seem to be at least somewhat confident that Anthony Davis is going to play. With that in mind, the ownership update, he is now 9% projected owned on DraftKings. On Fanduel, Anthony Davis is projecting for 26% ownership. So a little more substantial. Also odd because he's 10,000 on Fanduel compared to 9,400 on DraftKings. But with that in mind, are you getting to Anthony Davis?
I do not have a single Anthony Davis lineup. I get the logic on why you would, but I think that you're absorbing some risk. I like to view him as being in because I think it's just the most accurate reflection on what the Lakers could be, where I don't want to necessarily upgrade a bunch of guys, upgrade Kuzma, upgrade Markieff Morris, too many Morrises who are really thriving in my lineups recently. But I think to me, that's the thing with them is that I would rather assume he's in because otherwise it changes the complexion of the slate completely. And if he's not in, I think I'll have enough wiggle room to switch around because I do have Crowder, I have Bridges, I have Chris Paul, I have Devin Booker, I have Eytan. Like I have all the guys in the game. I have LeBron. So to me, I think this is a swap-timizer play, which I think now in the playoffs, some of us may have gotten spoiled over just 1 week of not having to swap-timize everything. I guess other than yesterday with Boban, I do think in general, like this is going to be a spot where if it does go the other way, then prepare to swap-timize away. But right now, I would just treat AD like he's in, but not play him.
Yeah. And by the way, we have to address that EMAC 2024. He does have a question for us that he threw in here. He asked, do I have Anthony Davis in my player pool? I don't have him in my player pool right now because I think even if he plays, I think he's going to be somewhat compromised, just given his injury history, also groin injuries. How often have we seen a groin injury to the point where a guy has to miss a game and is just back to 100% a few days later? I don't think that's going to be the case, especially not with a guy like Anthony Davis, who's been prone to these kind of injuries. And then also the Tyler taking his pants off for you. There's a whole lot of things in here that seem to point towards this is a significant injury for Anthony Davis.
One of those best out of context callbacks. So somebody tuning into the stream will just be like, why are they talking about his abuse at the hands of one of his fellow coworkers? But no, it's just, Tyler just taught me an important lesson about the delicacy of the delicate nature of a man's groin. Maybe the delicacy that is a man's groin as well. So with Anthony Davis, I did have him in my cruncher player pool, to be clear. And he just couldn't get there. Like even I have 10% randomness, so I'm not going too crazy with it. Maybe if I put it 30 or 40 or something, he'd get there more. But he didn't come up in a single lineup out of a 1,000 lineup crunch. And that's with like exposures capped on some guys to try to get it to where I want it to be for the sorting process. So to me, like I think he's just not in play. And if you are playing him, you're playing like those unlikely outcomes. On FanDuel, though, I don't get the 25% ownership. Like I do because it's power forward and I get how that goes. But like that's a lot to be potentially left kind of holding the bag.
Yeah, I mean, the other power forward options, and also he is in a price tier all by himself at 10,000. The next most expensive power forward on FanDuel is Robert Covington at 6,200. And there's Aaron Gordon, 5,600, Jay Crowder, 53. Given how much I like the other pay up options on the slate, I personally think it makes more sense to go to LeBron. I think it makes more sense to go to Lillard, Jokic. And also given that Anthony Davis is all the way up at 26% projected ownership, which I mean, I don't totally buy that that's how high it's going to be. If you were asking me over under on 80's ownership, I would take the under on that number. But even with that said, he's somebody it's really difficult for me to get to him.
We also got our news god pointing out in the chat that if you're not talking about Tyler's groin, is this even a DFS show? A great point. Clearly, news god knows our Awesemo content as well as anybody. A fixture, what we do about the new Tyler's groin segments, really heating it up on the streets. And we got 2 super chats from Ernest Davis. One he retracted, which just to be clear, if you ever put an incorrect super chat out there, don't feel like you have to put another one in. You can just mark it and go like, hey, this is my question. We'll definitely get it. So we appreciate you, Ernest Davis, though, for the 2 super chats. But then his official super chat says Monty Morris or Rivers, and I've made my claim today for Monty Morris, Greg, even though that might make me more of a chalk donkey if that ownership comes up. But for you, Morris or Rivers?
It is Rivers for me, although I'm curious to see because I didn't compare them on our most recent run of ownership that we got. Austin Rivers currently projected for 27% ownership. Monty Morris projected 28. For 28. So really, really close. I mean, for me, I feel much more comfortable with Austin Rivers minutes. I mentioned before that we've seen Austin Rivers play really significant minutes so far in the series, and he Also, he appears to be the guy that the Nuggets are most comfortable with as the primary defender on Damian Lillard. And there was actually a really funny clip. I don't know if you saw it from for as much as Dame went off last game, Rivers defended him really well. Rivers was in his face on all those shots. There's nothing to do. He's pirouetting, hitting fadeaway threes. There was one he shot that kind of rimmed out in overtime, and you just saw Austin Rivers praise and looks up and just says, "Thank God," which was really funny. He didn't realize he was on camera or anything, but they seem to be really comfortable with Austin Rivers guarding Damian Lillard. He's done a fairly good job of staying out of foul trouble, other than phantom fouls where he doesn't touch him that gets called as fouls to extend games into overtime in the playoffs. But other than that, I think they're really comfortable with Rivers out there. And I think that his minutes ceiling is significantly higher than Morris or Campazzo's.
Yeah, I don't think the minute ceiling is higher than Morris, because I think we just saw like what that can be, though. I guess, it was still a game where they were roughly in the same ballpark for minutes anyway. But I don't know. Like, here's the question that I haven't, and it worries me here because I think it's really how you think the field's going to go. Because with the way we have the ownership right now, I do think it's the ownership projections being like, look, these guys are pretty close. The field's going to, whatever. But will the field gravitate more towards, hey, Austin Rivers is a little bit cheaper, and I know he's been playing all these minutes, and Monty Morris is the backup, and oh my God, he's not starting. It's Campazzo never starting, even though it's been the case every game since Morris has been hurt recently, or was hurt, then came back. So like, I wonder if the Morris ownership will be as low as we have it, or if it's going to be high because he just had this monster game last time out. And people go like, as we see in the chat right now, people going, Austin Rivers, I guarantee he's going to suck. And like, oh, I project him to suck. And like, I just wonder if it'll be this close and if I might just be screwed by playing a lot more Monty Morris because of the fact that it does currently look like it's closer than it could be.
Yeah. I mean, by the way, I don't think that Austin Rivers is going to go out and destroy or anything like that. I just think that somebody who's likely to play somewhere in the neighborhood of 34 to 36 minutes at that cheap of a price point. I think that even if you get 20 fantasy points out of him at his price point on this type of slate, I think that is utility and value to it because it's hard to find cheap plays that we really like. So I feel really good about the minutes. And even last game went to double overtime. Monty Morris played in both overtimes. Monty Morris finished with 41 minutes. Rivers played 47. Rivers plays a ton for this team.
Yeah, no, he does. I mean, he's on the court enough. We've seen it enough times. Robert Covington, another of those guys who just being out on the floor. I think Adam has made a good point about it. ShipMyMoney on the deeper dive recently about, hey, if like Covington or Rivers is going to play, 35, 38, 39 minutes, and it doesn't matter at that point if you're a 0.75 fantasy point per minute guy or a 9 or a 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy. Like obviously you want it to be closer to the 0.9, but it's going to be a usable day at 0.75. And to me, I'm hoping that one of Morris or Rivers does get there. I honestly probably should have separated them now that I'm thinking about it, but I will have half the field of Rivers and double the field of Morris, and that's my stand. And I'm going to be really bummed when the field has Morris at 70%.
Well, here's the other thing too. So Robert Covington, not the best points per minute fantasy producer in the world, and we just brought him up as a point of reference. The last few shows I've done, either whether it be with you or with Josh, we brought up Covington. People freak out about Covington. They go, "This guy stinks. He doesn't do anything when on the court. He scored 6 points last game." All right, but look at Covington's fantasy points the last 3 games: 29, 27, and 40. The last game, obviously, a little inflated by the overtime, but it doesn't matter that the guy scores like 6 points in a playoff game because he's picking up, 9 to 11 rebounds per game. He's picking up 2 to 3 steals and blocks. A few assists get added in there. He's hitting a couple threes also. So it's in those kind of minutes, guys are just going to pick up counting stats, and we're really hurting for value on these slates. So some of these guys in the cheaper price range, the minutes become really valuable.
And I would say too, like you look at the positions that Covington's at, and I guess we could sort of transition over there because we haven't talked enough about Jay Crowder, Aaron Gordon, some of those guys. Like Aaron Gordon, I think could end up being a trap for casual players today, where they're going to see that he played just shy of 40 minutes, not realize that he played the vast majority of 2 overtimes as well, and think that, oh, he's getting more run now, like he probably should be getting. And he just hasn't been getting those minutes. Like they're still being chopped up with JaMychal Green, with Millsap, with whatever, with Shaq Harris and stuff. Like whoever they're putting out there, they're basically always siphoning away from Aaron Gordon. And I think he's the pivot to Covington. Jay Crowder's the pivot to Covington. Both these guys still going to be 25% or more owned. And like at that point, is it not just worth going to Covington for 10% more ownership is the issue that I have. And I'm landing on, I think it's worth just going to Covington and not absorbing the risk. Like I'll play some Crowder. I think I'll have less Aaron Gordon overall because he's just been so bad. But I think to me, like that's the question you have. And if you ask that question, I think the answer is actually going to be Robert Covington more times than not.
Yeah, it's Covington to me by pretty wide margin. I have him projected much higher than those other guys. Jay Crowder, he doesn't have the same minutes floor that we've seen out of Robert Covington. Covington plays as many minutes as he can handle in this series. They'll leave him out there for forever. And Jay Crowder, the other thing also, that game is a much more favorable fantasy environment than the later game. So if we're comparing him to Jay Crowder, The total for Denver Portland is 228. The total for Phoenix LA is 207. So this one game is going to have way more possessions in it than the other. And Jay Crowder's minutes, they're somewhat secure, except he's not going to play the same minutes that Robert Covington has played. So far in the series, we've seen Crowder play 29, 28, 31, 35, 29 minutes. Covington, somebody who they might go out and play 40 minutes. There's no chance that Crowder gets that kind of playing time, barring some crazy overtime situation. So, Covington, especially compared to the other options in that price range, he's a priority.
Yeah, and it's really just does come down to the minutes. 37 minutes projected for Covington today by Awesemo, 32 minutes projected for Crowder, and that 5 minutes and a 10-minute disparity between Covington and Aaron Gordon. And maybe for Gordon, I think you could sort of get him to 29. So it's probably closer than I think that's giving credit for, but still, like it's a pretty big disparity in terms of minutes. And even if you don't like Covington, which over the last few games have shown people that after they were, remember when we talked about Covington that first time and we were like, we were playing Covington today and everybody's like, oh, Covington. And now like you've had 3 games and it's like, I hope people realize now like he's usable, not even if he didn't have as good of a day as he would be usable if he put up 20 fantasy points, probably.
Yeah. And once again, it's not even good points from fantasy production. It's just that when you are in the playoffs and you're playing 38 minutes per game and he was priced at, 4,400 or something in those games to open the series, it's hard to fail if you're playing 38 minutes at 4,400.
Yeah, and he did find ways to do it, to his credit. But now that he's rebounding a little more, I don't know what happened there. I do feel like there has been a sort of a concerted change in him where he's not just straight turning his back to the rim when Michael Porter Jr. is the one he's defending. But I think that alone, like the fact he's around double-digit rebounds the last 3 games, certainly the correlation. And if you think that's been luck boxing, then maybe you can get away from Covington a little bit more. But it's going to be tough. We had one question here, which I think I just lost. Let me see. I think it was from... It was from, I think, in Austin, I feel like it was, but asking about fading all 3 10K guys on the slate. And I think that's, Dustin J, sorry. Dustin J asking Spags or Greg, I guess not both of us, only one of us can answer. How do you feel about fading all of Dame, Jokic, and Bron? I don't think that's the construction that works. If you're playing a bunch of lineups, I don't mind taking that stab. You could pay up for McCollum. You can put Chris Paul, McCollum, Booker. Like you can get there. I think you'd play Anthony Davis if you want to absorb that risk. I think you could do it, Greg, but I don't think it's one that I would want in like a large portion of lineups.
It's so hard for me to imagine that none of these guys pop a massive upside game because it's just the amount of minutes that I think these guys are going to play given the gravity of the situation. So LeBron James, I mean, here's maybe how it happens if maybe Denver Portland turns into a blowout, Anthony Davis plays, and then LeBron just ends up splitting usage with AD. Maybe that's the situation, but I don't have any lineups that don't have at least one of them.
If this were a 3-game slate, I think you get closer to finding a way there because then it's like, cool, like I put Donovan Mitchell with these guys and then it's like a bunch of AK guys and you're sort of getting there on a 2-game slate. I agree. And especially the fact too, like these guys are going to be probably playing 40 minutes. Like Jokic is at 1.6 fantasy points per minute anyway. So like he's basically there by just a fraction of playing for 40 fantasy points a minute or 40 minutes rather. Like he could be a slate breaker at that point already just by putting up like 70 or so. And then obviously LeBron and Lillard too, like, the same upside there, even though I'm not as big on Lillard. I knew for myself today, I'm like, I got to get at least 20% Lillard because the field's going to be there so heavy. I think that's the way you have to view it. Like if you want to come under on LeBron, if you want to come under on Lillard, if you want to come under on Jokic, that's fine. But to have none of them, I think would be a pretty grave mistake.
Yeah. And did you build any lineups with the possibility of a blowout? I'll do this a lot on 2-game slates where I'll hand build a couple of lineups and be like, hey, here's a lineup where if Lakers Suns turns into a blowout, I'll throw like THT into a lineup and then I'll stack up Portland and Denver with 7-man stacks, or I'll do vice versa. Did you do that with any lineups today?
So I didn't. I do get the logic on that. I think the same thing with game stacking too, where if you took all the pieces from one game, then just like 1 or 2 pieces from the other game. I think that's logical. For me, the issue is that sometimes when I do that, for just like knowing my own process, that like I'll sometimes get too cute with everything then, and that's why I just go like, screw it, I'm just going to be agnostic and let the ownership and the sorting process and my projections sort of do the thing. But I do think that's like a smart move. It just for me, like it's a slippery slope, Greg. Addiction is no joke.
Yeah, that's a good point. And our guy Soldope, who is addicted to 2v2 and 3v3 questions, he asked us Torrey Craig and Jokic or CJ McCollum and DeAndre Ayton. That is McCollum and Ayton for me.
I was getting a little too much Torrey Craig before, and I think I ended up did I get any and all of my final exposures? Because just want to make sure I'm accurate here. Oh, you know what? I got him with the field on Torrey Craig. He projects for 11.4%, 11.1%. So I don't mind the move of the tournament play, but I feel like that's such a worse lineup though with Torrey Craig. So I think I would go the Eytan, CJ, and then with Lillard. Like that's a strong 3 group.
Yeah, I do not have Torrey Craig playing a lot of minutes today. A lot of it because also I think that we're going to see the starters play extended minutes. And one of the reasons that I think at least some people might like Torrey Craig a little bit, he played 18 minutes last game, the most he's played in the entire playoffs. But keep in mind, a lot of that was garbage time run.
Yeah, I agree. Like there's certainly a lot of risk to that one, but price tag is what the price tag is. Dean is asking Powell and Payne, Powell and Bridges, or damn it, Powell and Payne, Powell and Bridges, or McCollum and KCP for a high dollar single entry on DK. I think for me, it would be McCollum and KCP, but as I mentioned, I'm willing to absorb that KCP risk today.
Yeah, and also don't forget KCP has been confirmed that he is going to be playing today. So
he was still so trash last game though that they're still like and then I think afterwards they were like, yeah, his knee wasn't good and it was worse by the end. So I'm deeply terrified of KCP today. But if he opens up McCollum free, that's a much better play.
Yeah, I agree. Norman, another thing also, I don't love Norman Powell for this slate, and Norman Powell's in 2 of the 3 combinations. So McCollum and KCP.
We got Soul Dope again asking Booker and Crowder for FanDuel or McCollum and Gordon. I just don't like the Gordon side that much. I'd go Booker and Crowder.
Yep, Booker and Crowder for me as well.
Yeah, Gordon to me is one play. I know he was coming up a lot with the Fantasy Cruncher optimization, and they do a great job. I forgot to actually thank Fantasy Cruncher and with my stuff too, and I'm sure they have not forgotten that, especially because they're giving me a free one. So extra shouts out to Fantasy Cruncher. Best thing you do for yourself is go check them out as part of an Awesemo package today. But I do think that that giving a lot of Gordon on there, I wonder if Gordon's going to be really highly owned because that's certainly in projections a lot of people use. Let's see. Any final questions here in the premium Slack or otherwise? Any final thoughts for you, Greg? Well, I don't think we have anything in the Slack. And if you got any YouTube questions, drop them in. If there's anything good, we'll hit them in a sec.
Yeah, I did see a bunch of stuff come through that was tagged that we were tagged in Slack, so we could bring up. Oh, maybe we didn't. I thought I saw some stuff earlier.
Yeah, I think I got News God alerts and Jake Hari telling me that Varlamov is starting for the Islanders in my mentions on Slack.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why I thought I saw some before, but I guess not. But we did get Morgan 2424 sent an update because he was the one who asked the question the day where I was doing the live before lock with Alex. The 3 stars on the slate were Lillard, Jokic, and Giannis, and all 3 of them had massive fantasy games.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I think that's definitely the spot where the ceiling plays from the studs and then just whatever value, definitely an option to make it work. Also, if you have some time today, if you got your lineups in, maybe you still can't get this done in time, but you could for the late game. Go check out PrizePicks. Go over to PrizePicks.com or download. Actually, they have an app, right? I think they have an app, but either way, it's on the read. I'm just freeballing here, but it is honestly a really good thing to be playing, especially when you do finish your ownership stuff and you get your lineup stored early for DraftKings or FanDuel. Go play on PrizePicks. You don't have to worry about the ownership on there. If you have some plays you like Nikola Jokic, I could take the prop for his points on PrizePicks. I could take the fantasy score. He's projected for 56 fantasy points by them. I have him today at 56.8. So that's pretty close there with the standard deviation and all that. Probably not a home run play by any stretch, but still one that my median projection's higher. And I do like Jokic today. So I can either go over if I don't get enough Jokic in my DFS lineups. I can go under if I'm getting a little too much of him there. That's one thing you can do with PrizePicks. You can hedge against your other plays and go do it over there and also get a $100 deposit match by using the promo code Awesemo. So really do. PrizePicks is a lot of fun. I like the concept a lot more and some of the other stuff that's been kicking around for a while. So I think in this spot with PrizePicks, definitely check them out and see if it helps your process or just gives you some more ways to make money. Never hurts. Any good YouTube questions here? We got I'm just seeing one here from D Owens 89. Morris and CJ or Payne and Booker is the question for me. That is Morris and CJ.
That is Morris and CJ for me as well. Also, I posted the link in the YouTube chat because somebody said, where did I see that KCP was going to be playing? I posted the report that he's in.
Yep. So that is a relief to me. That's why when Greg said that, A, I trust Greg, and B, I did see the news alert as well. So that is one that's confirmed. Wasn't just us making things up, which we never do anyway. We always make sure to double confirm things on here.
It was from Gamboa. He is a Suns reporter. He also had that Anthony Davis was going to be out the other day.
Marshall White asking, are you 2 overweight on the first game? I think that's sort of hard to decipher fully, but I'm overweight on Porter Jr., Jokic, and then I'm overweight on parts of it, but I am underweight on Damien Lillard, which I guess is the main part. But Greg, for the first game, would you feel as though you're overweight on it relative to the field?
I guess. I mean, it's a 2-game slate, right? So there's individual players that in Showdown, I'm certainly overweight to it. Yeah, I'm not really sure how to answer it, to be honest. I'll say maybe.
And then showdown, I guess showdown captains for both ones, because we did have somebody earlier in the show who's asking us to do single games. It's hard to do single games and talk about the main slate. People are here for the main slate, but you can sort of surmise a lot of this for the showdowns. But Greg, give me a showdown captain for both of them. And I guess one showdown captain fade you would do, because I could tell you right now for the first game, I think I would be inclined to fade Jokic and Lillard, I think, at captain. And then for the second game, I'd probably be inclined to fade LeBron as captain. I think that's sort of it for me. But any thoughts on who would be the winning captain for either game?
I could tell you, I mean, we've already locked now. I'll tell you the dumbest player I played at captain say in the early game. That was Marcus Howard, just because it enabled me to pay up for everybody.
So I hope he shoots the lights out then. Honestly, I had enough of him where I'm rooting for Marcus Howard, showdown winning captain. I think that's a ballsy move by you, Greg. Got the MMA show coming up next on the channel, so go hit that out. Follow at Ehrenberg DFS, follow at Chris Spags, and then go jump over. Check out our boys, Pete the Heat and Jason Floyd, doing the MMA strategy show up next, up right now. We'll see you guys again soon. Enjoy your days. Good luck.